Memory, all alone in the moonlight. I can smile at the old days. Life was beautiful then.
1,085 books, 9,607 minutes, 199 debates, disagreements, arguments, probably more than that, and countless shocking revelations later, we have arrived at our 200th episode of Keep It Fictional podcast from the Port Moody Public Library. First of all, thank you to all the listeners for the time that you have spent with us. We wouldn't be here without you. And we started this podcast in 2020, apparently 4 years ago. And it was during the pandemic. And we wanted to have a way to still connect with our patrons, to be able to still talk books with all of you. And ever since then, every Friday morning, we do our recording. And this is my favorite hour of my work week. Despite being really bad at this and get stressed about it every single week, this is like the best time. And I cannot think of anyone else in the world that I would rather spend this special hour with than the 6 people that are here today. And yes, listeners, I did say 6, because in addition to the people that you expect to hear from today, we have 3 very, very special book friends who are able to join us again for this reunion. And it is my honor today to introduce each of them, but I'm going to keep you in suspense for a little bit. I'm just going to start with the usual suspects first. The first book friend is the newest member to our Keep It Fictional podcast. So not quite 200 yet. So happy 27th episode to you, Emma. But even though you're the newest, I feel like our listeners got to know you really well already because you're not afraid of telling them what you like. So we know that you are a big giant fan of sports fictions and sports manga. I think the first thing I got to know you is like you're showing me your like haiku tattoo. I'm just like that's yeah. And then you also are the go-to person here to recommend some sapphic or queer relationship stories. That is sort of your thing. And of course, you also told us that you love like you can enjoy the cozy, but you also like a little bit of doom and gloom, as you said. And being here, I personally super appreciate you because 50% of the time you're my ally on this show for most of the things. So thank you for being here. Yeah. And so, I don't know if you expected Emma to, when you sign up for this job, to have like weekly homework, that much weekly homework, but there's no homework this week. So I'm dying to know what you have been reading or what you're reading. So for you to share that. And today, because it's our 200th episode, we're going to go, the little like restriction on everybody's book talk is that it has to be exactly 200 words, just in case you don't think this is homework enough. So Emma, what did you read without any like assignments?
So for this book, I actually this isn't the book that I read this week because the book I've been reading this week is one that I'm talking about the podcast in a couple of weeks, so I don't want to spoil that one. But this is the book that I was reading a couple of weeks ago that I found really interesting. So doing this little assignment felt very much like homework. I haven't had to use a word counter in a really long time. But my little blurb, exactly 200 words. In Scotland, in the year 1567, a pregnant 24-year-old Mary Queen of Scots is being transported to the isolated Lochleven Castle, located on a small island in the middle of a loch. Her only companions are her 2 maidservants, Cuckoo, a romantic and quick-tempered Frenchwoman, and Jane, a quiet and observant Scot. The 3 women are to remain in captivity in Lochleven, where their captors, a group of Protestant Scottish noblemen, want nothing more than for Mary to be dead. The next few months are claustrophobic. The 3 captive women are under the constant supervision of the laird of the castle and his wife, Agnes, who spies on Mary under the guise of trying to be her friend. Mary is frequently harassed by Margaret Erskine, the laird's mother and her father, King James V's former mistress. The rebel Scottish noblemen force Mary to sign abdication papers to relinquish her throne to her son James VI, who they also have in captivity. All seems lost for the Scottish queen until her childhood friend and close confidant, Lady Sutton, arrives, and the four women begin planning their escape from Loch Leven. Mary is calculating, charming, and unbowed in this atmospheric contemporary reimagining. So the book title is called The Tower by Flora Carr, obviously about Mary, Queen of Scots. I won't add more because that goes over the word count.
Thank you, Emma. That's not quite what I was expecting. So I guess there's like other side of Emma that we still have to discover.
I'm a big Mary, Queen of Scots fan, in case you did not know already. And this book does have some sapphic relationships in it, so it's still quite an Emma book.
Cool. Well, looking forward to maybe hearing more about that at some point on the podcast. So our next book friend is an original member of the Keep It Fictional team. I think you and I are the only people that have been here for like all of it, Miss Corene. Like you're so devoted to this show that you have dedicated like your Thursday, every single Thursday, to the podcast. And I'm not sure if there's any one of us here who could handle the stress of not knowing what book we're going to be talking about 12 hours later during the recording. So clearly you thrive on that, I don't know, thrill of not knowing what to read, I guess. And I'm still always amazed that like with like no sleep, you're able to talk about the books, like coherently. So yeah, I don't know if any one of us could do that or not. But Miss Corene, of course, most famous for, I mean, we all have strong feelings here, but I feel like Miss Corene strong feelings are like all on her face all the time. Like I feel like many of us can keep it in, whereas, like you look at Corene, you know exactly what she's thinking about whatever you're talking about. So Miss Corene, I'm dying to know what you did last night because you didn't have to read. So what did you do? And tell us about a book that you have read.
What did I do last night? Well, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't pack for the trip that I'm going on tonight. Um, but I did pick a book and I wanted to choose something that was very much up my wheelhouse. I was very thankful in that a hold came in yesterday just as I was leaving work. And so that pretty much set that. Again, I have exactly 200 words. I'm holding up my phone as promised, 200 words exactly, and I shall not deviate from them. And I have to say I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because of the title of my book, but you'll see why soon. Bianca Booker, author of Corkdork, dives into a new subject, the inscrutable and misunderstood world of contemporary art in, get the picture, a mind-bending journey among the inspired artists and obsessive art friends who taught me how to see. Guided by 3 questions: what is art, how to love it, and does it matter? She interviews gallerists, curators, and tastemakers, desperate artists who need the right eyes on their art, learns to stretch canvas, meets millionaire collectors, the flippers who use their paintings like stocks, performance artist who straddles the line between art and pornography, who teaches her about taste, becomes a guard at the Guggenheim to spend mindless hours around art, and talks about the history of art and how art taste has shaped larger historical movements. She discovers her own obsession with art and her own taste, and the confidence to state what she likes and dislikes and why. She discovers a new way to look at the world around her. Perception, learning to notice, getting the details takes time. Oscar is a wry and clever tour guide who will tell you all the stories behind the pictures in a charming and engaging way for the uninitiated. So yeah, come on. Like the title is so long. It took up so many words. But that's all I can say about it because I only have 200 words. So there.
That's the one I was going to read for that art episode. But then I ended up reading that other thing. Thanks, Corene. All right, our next book friend, our next special book friend, is someone I feel like all readers would want them to be, also all authors would want them to be their readers, because if you can gain Sadie's love, if you can like, get in her good books that she's decided you are worth her time, she will be the most loyal reader that you can ever have. And you have to be that if you are a series reader. And I don't know if many of us just kind of abandon series halfway through, but I don't think Sadie ever does that. Whether she buys them or not, that's another question. But she definitely, definitely will read all of them. And because of that, guess who is the most mentioned author on the show? I think we all know Kelly Armstrong. And how many times, Sadie, do you think you have talked about Kelly Armstrong on the show? Books. I'm sure you have mentioned it more than that, but how many books of Kelly Armstrong? 8. We have mentioned Kelly Armstrong 8 times. So, like I said, if you can get Sadie to like you, then Sadie will be, your biggest advocate. So, Sadie, do you have the 9th Kelly Armstrong book today or something else?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, everybody. I feel like no, okay. No, it is not a Kelly Armstrong book, but it is an author that is kind of well on their way to becoming in my heart, much like Kelly Armstrong. They only have one series so far though, so they're gonna have to write a bit more for me to really, really decide. But yeah, so similar to Emma, my 200 words have not started yet. Similar to Emma, this is not a book that I'm currently reading because the one I'm currently reading is one I'm going to talk about in a later episode, so I didn't want to spoil that. Okay, my 200 words start now. So the book that I'm currently reading is a high-stakes, action-packed YA fantasy, which blends a richly created fantasy world that is full of magic and murder with elements of real Indigenous struggles and horrors. I've mentioned this series on KIF before, and the first book was probably my most favorite book that I read last year, even though it wasn't published in 2023, and so I couldn't use it for my end of year top 5. The series first gained publicity through Book Talk, although this is not where I learned of it. This is A Vicious Game by Melissa Blair. The third volume in the Halfling saga once again follows King's blade and assassin Kira. However, now, much to Kira's horror, with a new king. Still struggling to keep her ghosts and guilt for all that she's been forced to do at bay, Kira finds herself finally in a place where she belongs, with friends and allies and a lover who truly care about her. However, the new king is even more ruthless and cruel than the last, and Kira must learn how to drag herself out of her despair. Otherwise, she and everyone she cares about will lose everything.
So even though it's not a Kelly Armstrong, that's everything. That's all the qualities that you love in books is in that book, Sadie. So yeah. All right. So those are the voices that you expect to hear. They're still special, but you know that they're gonna show up today. But we have 3 others.
I feel really
other-
patronized at the moment. Oh, you're still special, but like not as special as these people.
Well, 'cause
On the other hand, they are very special, and I'm excited to hear from them.
there you go. See? Anyway, so so the first our special mystery guest, I mean, give you watching the video, you know who they are already, but our first very special mystery guest, also an original member of the Keep It Fictional team. And I'm telling you, Corene's mom, it's not for a lack of trying that I, don't get her on the show, because I tell her every single time, go check the spreadsheet. Maybe there's something that you want to, join us for. Oh, we only have 2 people, Liz. Can you come join us? I try so hard to get her on the show all the time. But Liz is busy, so she can't entertain us all the time. But of course, Liz, according to what is it, Corene? The queen of emotionally evocative books. But I do have to say, these days, looking at your Goodreads, I don't know if that still apply. And we were talking yesterday. I feel like, you always say that you're a mood reader, but maybe you're more like a I think yesterday what you said, face reader. I feel like maybe that's, yeah, because like, once you've got that face and that's all you read, and then you move on to a next phase. So, you can tell our readers later what phase you're in right now. But Liz is, of course, also the person who have dodged at least half of the existential questions by a good old "it depends" answer. So diplomatic on and off the air, and don't get into these squabbles among some of us. So yeah, Liz, welcome back. And I'm glad to announce to, again, Corene's mom, that Liz will be joining us a little bit more in the fall. So look forward to that. So Liz, what book are you reading right now? And how are you doing?
So happy to be back. Congratulations on 200 episodes of KIF. That's amazing. What a job well done, everybody. Well, of course, I had to get homework for one of my first episodes back. So I'm going to talk about a book that's in one of my current reading phases. And there will be an upcoming episode that focuses around books in this genre, I suppose you can call it. Without having started my blurb yet, it is the Marigold Mind Laundry. So a charming, cozy book in translation, which I will tell you more about right now. As a fiery sunset bathed the apartment in a magnificent light, a woman went to her kitchen to make a cup of tea. She had done this countless times before in the same apartment, but not in this same life. She had willed herself to be reborn yet again, searching. Or maybe she was running, trying to keep something at bay. In The Marigold Mind Laundry by Young Yoon Yoon, translated from the Korean by Shanna Tan, Ji-yoon is the proprietor of the titular shop, a place for her customers to find comfort from painful past memories. She's part counselor and part laundress, washing away the pain that manifests itself as stains on clothing, or at least smoothing out the creases with an iron. Part of the latest spate of cozy, heartwarming, and introspective Korean books to be translated into English, Marigold Mind Laundry gets the reader contemplating what stains on the heart we all carry, and how those blemishes have made us into the people that we are. We are reminded that both darkness and light coexist together, each bringing its opposite into sharper focus. The question is, can Ji-yoon also come to terms with the stains upon her own heart?
Thank you, Liz. That's still a very Liz book, I think. All right. So Liz, we're going to see you again soon. I'm very excited about that in the upcoming episodes. But the next two people we haven't seen for more than a year now. But they are back. They're back and to join us. So our next special guest, a true book lover and a book collector, always looking for treasure, and then sharing those gems with us on the podcast. Like you're always bringing things, making sure that books that really deserve the love and deserve the readership, gets the promotion on the show. Champion of the underappreciated book. Mark, you have a super strong brand. I feel like we all kind of be like, this book like is a Mark book. And even like I was telling you how like you left some books at the library, and even people who don't know you very well, they're like, oh yeah, that looks like a Mark book. They already know it's you. Despite they don't. So very, very strong brand of books. But that doesn't mean that, you only stay in your wheelhouse, because I'm constantly amazed at like sort of the stuff that you know. And like every time you make a reference to something, I'm like, how do you know all these things? But anyway, we'd love to hear what you've been up to, Mark. And of course, you're gonna bring the very underappreciated James Patterson book to the show today. So
all right, thank you, Virginia. So no James Patterson today, unfortunately. Instead, I decided to get a little bit creative when I heard we were going to be given a 200-word sort of challenge. So I selected The Assignment, or On the Observing of the Observers by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. And my 200 words starts now. After the wife of a renowned American psychologist disappears and is later found dead in the desert of an unnamed African country, the filmmaker F is hired to uncover the truth of her death. While the basic premise of Dürrenmatt's story is one of constant confusion, alienation, and despair, despite its basicness. In her investigation, F encounters the plots and machinations of police chiefs, Secret Service officers, and government agents of various stripes, whose differing views of events and reality leave the reader ever unsure of what is fact and what is manipulation. To make matters unsettling further, F is under observation. But by whom exactly? Our cast of government agents? Others seeking to crack the case? Or someone else entirely? Feelings of suspicion build as F observes them through her investigation and tracked herself. Every moment takes on a sinister tone as each conversation and event adds to the list of diverging threads of data. Dürrenmatt breaks down the rules of dramatic tension, instead plunging the reader headfirst into a world of doubts about the truthfulness of any person. In this way, he shows the extent of technological surveillance, internal power struggles, and the manipulative effect they have on the truth.
I love, oh, you just cheated and be like, I'm going to say all the long title now, and then that does not count as the 200 words. You did it, Liz did it,
Yeah.
See, Corene,
Yeah.
the master of, no, I know, that's what I'm saying. The master of like
It's a 200 word
did not do that.
description, not introduction.
Sure, Mark. All right, well, last but not least, and I saved this very special spot for you because all of us are being paid to be here today. But there's one person who is not paid, but yet they are still here to join us. Fiona, welcome back. We're so excited to see your face. You can tell our listeners later where you are and how you've been. But Fiona, when I think about writing this blurb, I'm just like, there's so many things we associate with Fiona. There's Draculas, there's foraging, there's, I don't know why we stuck you with mushrooms now. Muppets. Not, well, yeah, Muppets, the clergy, nuns and clergy. And also, as you call them, books where nothing happens. So, and yeah, so, there's just like so many things. And as I've said to you, ever since you left, it's hard because, editing this podcast, I don't have those like very, very great lines that you always and every episode that I could use as a teaser. So I miss that a lot. But you're also always very like, I find that whenever we're talking about like more difficult subjects, whenever we're talking about something a little more serious, you're also always very elegant in the way you talk about it, and so genuine, so sincere. So I really, really admire that. So Fiona, welcome back, and tell our listeners how you've been and what book you're reading right now.
Thank you, Virginia. I'll try to get some good one-liners in that you can use. We'll see. No promises. And I have had a really great year of reading because what I am doing is I'm basically like catching up on my KIF backlog, all the things that you guys recommended that I didn't want to read because I wouldn't be able to use them on the show. I'm now going and reading. So that's been really gratifying. And a book I read recently that I really loved and wanted to share with you is Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. And my 200 words starts now. In a near future Ghana, a young girl finds a seed in an asteroid. This encounter costs her her family, home, and identity. This novella follows her journey as she becomes Sankofa. This novella follows her journey as she becomes Sankofa, a figure of local legend and folklore. This book is at once gripping and meandering, grounded and fantastical. The vision of the future is recognizable while still being inventive. Okorafor's description of jelly tellies, which are malleable television sets, and all-seeing robocops that direct traffic are so fleshed out that I find I can picture Sankofa's. Like, I'm going to practice this name so I can say it. Okorafor's description of jelly tellies, malleable television sets, and all-seeing robocops that direct traffic are so fleshed out, I find I can picture Sankofa's world perfectly. The book straddles YA and adult genres. Sankofa, though still a child, is strong and capable. She's stubborn and likable, and I desperately wanted her to succeed in reuniting with the seed, despite its clearly negative influence over her. However, there's a lingering sense of doom, and we know that any happy ending for her is going to be relative. I highly recommend the audiobook. It's narrated by Ajoa Ando, Bridgerton's Lady Danbury, who brings incredible energy and impeccable characterization to the book. It is considered a prequel to Okorafor's Binti series, but it stood well on its own. However, I am now so excited to read the rest of the series.
All right, I just have to say, I think that's the book because I've been like trying to listen to snippets of this podcast to prepare for today. I think this is the book that maybe, at least the author, is a book you said that you just pick up without, when you're talking about without reading the back. And that shocked Corene, like as everything does. And I remember Corene was just like, could not deal when you said that you will pick up a book without knowing what the book is and would just go read it. So yeah, just thought I'll bring that back, Corene. All right.
It's the equivalent of just like showing up at the airport and getting on an airplane. Who knows
Doesn't
where
that
you're
sound
going?
exciting?
No, because you could be going to like Wyoming. You don't know.
This is very indicative of our 199 previous episodes, I feel. Like this is classic KIF. Also speaking about classic, we cannot forget Virginia. She is one of the OG Keep It Fictional book lovers. She's also our editor and coordinator extraordinaire. And make sure that stuff gets done. We show up, we sound okay, gets rid of all the little blooper bits. Anyways, you don't need to know that. In addition to appearing in front of the camera and microphone, she makes the behind the scenes magic of Keep It Fictional happen. Her reading tastes are diverse. And even though she is probably one of the nicest people I know, don't be fooled about her, reading tastes, because if she doesn't like something, she will not like something. That being said, she's passionate about making sure the right books get into the hands of the right readers. She's a discerning reader who takes care with her podcast picks. I'm amazed by the multiple selections that she will have on any given week as to what she'll talk about. What is the best book that she can present for you this week? But no matter what your reading tastes are, even if you're far from being Virginia's reading twin, she has a compelling way of describing her books that will make you go, maybe I should read that space opera, or that psychologically banana pants fever dream, or that family drama that revolves around cannibalism. Maybe it sounds kind of good. So Virginia, what have you been reading lately?
That's so nice of you to say all that words. I don't think anything of that is true, but thank you, Liz, for being so nice. All right, my 200 words. All right, wanted, young historian, conscientious and neat, perfect knowledge of colloquial French. This sounds like the job tailored for you. So you go to the address on the ad. You push open the door, but it's dark inside the house. A voice tells you to go upstairs and turn right. You follow the instructions, and you came to a room illuminated by candles. You see a fragile old woman sitting up in bed, stroking a rabbit. She said she's looking for someone to edit her late husband's memoir. The only condition is that the person has to live in the house for the duration of the job. You're about to say no, you rather live at home when her niece appears silently next to you. You turn and you gaze into her bright green eyes. Sorry, Fiona. You say, yes, I will take the job. This is Aura by Carlos Fuentes, translated by Lysander Cam. This short novella demands an immediate reread upon finishing. Told in second person, the menace in this quiet, dreamlike literary horror slowly builds up as you learn more about the old woman, her husband, and her niece. But when you realize what's happening, it's too late. And this is not the 200, but cat, everyone, for the cat people, even though there's not really a cat inside, maybe the best kind of cat book. Sorry. All right. Um, yeah, okay. So thank you everyone for sharing their books. I am so excited that you're all here. I will get over this excitement at some point. All right, so we're going to travel down the Keep It Fictional memory lane for a little bit and see how much we remember and how much we have learned about our fellow book friends. And I'm going to ask, like my book friends to help me with this. Thinking back to the, I don't know, 9,607 minutes of Keep It Fictional, I am sure we all have our favorite moments. And at some point, if you want to share yours, we can totally do that. But in talking with Liz, we both agree that nothing will beat the time when Fiona said, when we were promoting Enzo's Summer Reading Club, the board game that is inspired by Clue, and we talk about what we're going to be reading and which room in the house we're going to visit, Fiona said, quote, "I'm going to start with the bedroom where my skills lie." They immediately add, "and I'm talking about sleeping, definitely about sleeping." But yes, then it requires what, another 10 minutes for us to like settle down before we can continue our podcast. So I feel like that is like, I don't know if anything can top that moment, at least according to Liz and I, and we got it on tape, Fiona. So yeah, so it's been really fun to listen to the clips and the snippets, So like I said, I'm gonna get my book friends to share some of them with you all today. And of course, no episode of Keep It Fictional can be without some good old existential questions. So we're gonna also throw in some of those also. So I'm actually gonna start, I think, let's see. I got a plan, but we'll see. Let's start with Mark. Mark is gonna give us his existential question.
Oh, yes. How much does a book cover influence your first impression of it when you've never heard of it before?
I'll get out the elephant in the room right now. So much, so much. As we know, I will go and I will pick up a book and I'll read it based solely on the book cover.
I can go next. A book cover will influence whether or not I pick up that book initially, but I am not as bold as Fiona. I do have to read the description before fully committing to reading it or not. But a book cover will determine whether or not I pick up the book to then read the description.
I mean, it wouldn't be Keep It Fictional unless I was vehemently disagreeing with someone. And so Fiona. Honestly, the book cover doesn't matter at all. Because usually when I'm picking up the book, it's for very particular reasons. Either it's been recommended by a fellow reader or Anton Her, or it's an author I like or a subject that I'm interested in, or I've heard a little bit about the plot. And so honestly, the book cover does not affect me in the slightest, because I'm usually going after a book for a particular reason, or it's because it's an assignment for Keep It Fictional and I really don't have a choice in the matter because it's the only book about cowboy aliens.
You didn't say recommended by BTS. What's wrong with you today? You okay?
Obviously, I'm saving all of
Okay.
that for the end of the drinking game. That I chose Anton Her because he's top of my mind, and poor RM's in the military and can't give me book recommendations.
Well, and weirdly, I'm gonna agree with Corene. What is going on? Yeah, right? What's happening? Yeah, I don't care about the book cover at all. I do appreciate the work that designers put in book covers, and all of that, but it doesn't matter. If I'm gonna read, I'm gonna read it. So book covers does not matter. Sadie.
I think I'm kind of close to what Emma said. It will definitely be if I don't know anything about a book, it will be what gets me to pick it up a lot of times. But I think, yeah, sorry, Fiona. I think that I do have to actually read the back of it and find out a little bit more about the book to determine whether or not I will read it. But it definitely will draw me in, and I think I'm definitely attracted to certain kinds of book covers. And on the opposite side, they will also turn me off from reading a book. So if a book cover is particularly bad, in my opinion, then even if the story might be something I might be interested, I don't know if I will pick it up. Don't know.
What about like give us an
Just-
e-reader? Then you don't have to look at the book cover.
That's true. I think that it sets the tone of what the book could potentially be. And so I just think about, because I read a lot of paranormal romance, and some of those book covers are just truly terrible. And I think that it sets the tone for what they want, what maybe not the author, but what the publisher wants to be highlighted in the book, and what the book, kind of the tone of the book, is going to be. And so I think that is what turns me off kind of more than anything, just because it kind of gives the sense that the book is going to focus on certain things or kind of be written a certain way.
I feel like we talked about this in another episode once too, of like a maybe the bad books covers one, where like a lying book cover is almost as bad as a bad book cover, because it's supposed to like give you the mood and everything, and then when they like put a cat on a book that doesn't have a cat, just messes with me.
Yeah, but cats are inherently terrifying.
Yeah, it's great. I'm just like, oh no, there's a cat in there. Oh no, there's not actually. There's mention of cats somewhere upstairs, but like you never see them. So that's a perfect cat cover. But anyway, Liz and Mark.
I like pretty things. I can be superficial. Um, it'll draw me to a book. It's like pretty packaging. It's got a nice wrapper. They spent the time, put the resources into making it attractive, which I would hope would reflect what's inside, which I know is not always the case, okay? Like I'm not delusional about this. That being said, I will read a book with an ugly cover if A, I have to. So like Corene, A, I have to, or B, I'm really compelled to read the book. Like the everything I've heard about it sort of supersedes any opinion I may have about the cover. But yeah, I like nice looking packaging.
Yeah, so I'd probably somewhere around Sadie and Emma on this one because I find something that if it's distinctive or has something that you can tell is different from other books, or if it's a particular series or something like that, you can recognize it as something that you're interested in and things like that. So I think when it has a particular kind of hook to it, it definitely does influence me, especially if you're like on Libby and you're just like scrolling through stuff and you don't know what any of it is. It's like that cover can sort of get you to click on it.
All right. So time to Mark's question. This is like our see how much you remember from the show questions. Corene, I'm going to direct this question to you first. So you can tell strong opinions about aesthetics, strong opinion about color palettes, strong opinions about covers. So we did talk about covers at one point, and I think it is on the good cover, bad cover episode where Liz brought a book to the show. And you were all discussing the cover. The UK, I think the difference between the UK cover and the North American cover, because often they have different ones. And Corene's comment was that there were too many butts on the cover. And then Liz started to say, yeah, what's with all the crevices and curves? And then Fiona said the fact that her butt doesn't factor heavily into the story, that's pretty misleading. Just like you said earlier, just lying. Corene, do you remember what book that is? It's a Liz book. Give you a hint, it's a science fiction. And then, of course, we're going to see if Liz remember what book it is later.
Madam Butterfly?
Well, I mean, the fact that the butts have nothing to do with the book.
Oh, I have no idea. Not, but I am very proud of myself. So
Liz, do you happen to remember what the book is?
I'm on my phone trying to figure it out, but I do remember it's Becky Chambers. Wasn't The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet? Was it that one? It was one of those.
To be taught, you're fortunate. Yes.
Right. So I was trying to look up the cover to traumatize everybody again, but we won't go that far.
People can look it up. People can look it up. All right.
You can look it up on your own, yeah.
Yes, people can look it up on their own if they're interested in this cover. All right, great. Thank you. Emma. Oh yeah, Too much. Okay. Don't have to do the hand gestures.
It's
No thanks.
really like out there. Yeah, it's much very out there. Just round and chase.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'm not gonna look it. Emma. So again, being you said, I'm gonna give this question to you because a couple weeks ago you said this is a cannibalism friendly podcast. So we're gonna go there. So there is a book.
I think I said
Corene.
this is a cannibalism friendly episode because Corene and Sadie were not present.
Oh, okay, fine.
It was just you and I.
That's why it's cannibalism family. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right. See an ally. So there is a 2024 release that Corene talks about that she thinks might have a potential to be her favorite book. However, there are two things against it. One, the cover, because she does not want to be seen on the bus, on the SkyTrain with the cover because of the color specifically of the cover. And the other thing that may prevent this from being one of her favorite book is that if the book ends in cannibalism, I'm out, according to her. Do you remember what book it is? It is a Japanese book in translation. I'll give you that hint.
I remember who's saying something about if this ends in cannibalism, then I'm done. I remember getting into that discussion, but I don't think I remember what the book is. We talk about so many Japanese books and so many different Japanese authors that I'm just like, was it Miyako Kawakami? Was it Hiromi Kawakami? Was it a totally different Kawakami? I have no idea.
You've only been here for 27 episodes. You have to remember this.
My memory's not that good.
Corene, what is this book? And I would like to know whether you read it or not.
Was this on my to be read? Butter. I remembered what I said.
Yeah, I would have never gotten that.
Did you read
Sorry,
it?
Virginia.
Corene, did you read it?
Actually, I have planned myself a book reading getaway in November, and that is the book that I have purchased to read on it. But I believe it's coming out in paperback with a slightly different cover. So that might really help me out.
Like not as yellow?
Also,
Not
no
as
cannibalism.
yellow. Oh, really? Oh, but don't spoil it. It's like sometimes like the looming specter of cannibalism is like enough. I just don't want it to like actually rain cannibals.
But now you know. Now you know it's safe. According to this, it's safe.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Corene was so anti-yellow because I clearly enjoy yellow. So
It's too much. It's too in your
Yeah.
face. And I think after, what was it? Earthlings? Yeah, Earthlings. That was so damaging that
I think it's not yellow though.
It is
it's still
called cannibalism.
butter. Yeah.
Butter.
Okay, so are we talking about yellow or about
You could make
cannibalism?
people butter. You could make people butter. It could have been about people butter.
Would you rather the cover was red then?
Like a smooth, like light, pale goldenrod.
I like Virginia's face.
All right, sure. Okay, Fiona with the slightly not yellow but a little bit yellow background. I saw you looking at it when Corene was like, I don't like yellow. Fiona, what is your existential question for the group today?
Okay, so my existential question is about nonfiction reading. What is a subject that you just love to read nonfiction about?
Don't worry, I got this one. Art. Done.
Jeopardy? Jeopardy seems to be what I only read nonfiction about is the show Jeopardy.
Jeopardy and
let's go
Gilmore
with
Girls.
that.
Gilmore Girls. Yeah, I was
Gilmore
going to say
Girls,
that's two
Jeopardy, and
books.
Gilmore Girls, and music. Honestly, I do. One of my favorite nonfiction books, which I've never talked about, I mentioned on the show, is "This Is Your Brain on Music." So yes, Jeopardy, Gilmore Girls, and music.
Yeah, so the other non-fiction reader. I think I only read them when they are like a very, very narrow, very, very specific thing. Typography. I read typography. I love it. I know there's actually a book coming out that is just on Comic Sans that I cannot wait to read. But I do actually have one out right now. I think I told some of you about it. It's The Notebook. It's like about thinking on paper, like, so it's an entire book about, like how people use notebooks and they still, like what happened to you when you write things down rather than like typing things. So yeah, so when it's something super specific, that's my weird, yeah.
I
have to
really
say,
hope
Virginia,
that somebody walks into the store, asks for the Notebook, and gets that book instead of the Nicholas
Oh
Sparks
no,
book.
no! I would be very, very specific about which notebook I'm looking for. Not that one.
I have to say, Virginia, because we actually do have this in common in our nonfiction reading, is books about like productivity or like, which seems like a very weird thing for both of us to be into, but I know you read them, and because so do I, and we've had like the 4,000, 42,000.
4,000
I don't know how
weeks.
much.
4,000
Yeah, I was
weeks.
like, how long is my life going to be? 4,000 weeks?
4,000 weeks. That's all we've got.
I don't read a lot of nonfiction. My nonfiction is kind of like very, very specific. Like I really liked a book that was just called Play with Your Cat, or I really like an anime art book, things like that. But I feel like the nonfiction I read the most often is probably poetry, which I know is an unpopular opinion in this group, but I'm kind of the resident poetry reader.
I love books about food. Books about food where it comes from, food that has gone extinct. I love reading books about being in the kitchen, being a chef, what that's like. I love cookbooks. I love the pictures. I love making the recipes. Books like Butter, which is centered around food, that yellow food called Butter. Yeah, anything about food. I love it.
I guess I'd say one of the ones I've talked about a bit on here is how things have came to be the way they are. So like a historical kind of overview of things. Um, I remember I mentioned one of the best of the year was like how the internet came to be the way it is now, how it developed specifically to be a social media dominated hellscape. Um, basically. So those types of books I find quite interesting, and that's probably like the most common type of nonfiction that I read.
Fiona, did you share yours?
I guess not. I'm with Liz on like liking history of food a lot, but I'll read anything about coffee. And I also really like some popular science, like specifically like theoretical physics, but it has to be like in a way that I can understand because I don't have a lot of background knowledge. But if someone can like make it like understandable for me, that is like ideal.
You're like an onion, Fiona. Every time I think that I've got that onion figured out, there's another layer of theoretical physics that I didn't see coming.
What we do know about Fiona is that Fiona has business ideas everywhere. So Sadie, you talk about a book once in one of your most anticipated reads. I'm going to give you the book. It's called Bad Witch Burning by Jessica Lewis. Okay. And that inspired Fiona to come up with a business idea. And I think not just like, and we're talking about nonfiction. I think they decided that maybe they need to write a book about this business ideas. Do you remember what it is? And this is one that I don't think exists yet. So we might need to figure out with Liz what the Dewey number would be for this later.
Never actually read the book, so I'm trying to think of what it would have been that may have prompted Fiona to want to write a
Here's
book
some
about
rapid like Googling
something.
here right now.
Yeah, I might be looking up the book to see what I know it's about a witch. Okay, some sort of like necromancy. I'm
So
gonna say Fiona wants to write a book about necromancy.
yes, but not just necromancy. Necromancy finances for dummies. So Liz, where would that be in our, as our technical services coordinator, where would that be in our Dewey Decimal System?
I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't think there's a precedent for that one.
How's the book going, Fiona?
I think I'm gonna have to revisit that episode. I mean, sounds like a winning idea. Clearly, I let it fall through the cracks.
Oh, well, other than in addition to like book recommendations, like again, speaking of nonfiction, we also, I feel like, give out a lot of free advice to people, whether they want it or not. One of the ones I feel like would be that Corene keep harping on, do not accept invitations to spend a night at some remote mansion with anyone, acquaintances or not. So before we go into the actual question, I would like to ask everybody, who do you think here is the safest person? If you have to pick one of your book friends to go to this mansion, who do you think would be the safest? Like for me, for example, it wouldn't be Corene because she knows too much about poison. It wouldn't be Sadie because she reads a lot of assassins book. Like it would probably be and betrayal. She loved a good books about like when people get betrayed. So I'm probably gonna pick like either Liz or Mark. I think they're safer to be in a mansion with. Who would you pick?
This is actually pretty easy for me. I think it would be Fiona. And yeah, it's not that I don't think that you're capable of murder. It's just that I think I would have had to do something really truly heinous to deserve it. And like you're so kind and so gentle that like I feel like if we were like wrestling in front of a giant window in front of a staircase, like I feel like I could take you. I feel like your heart is just so good that even though you would be so angry, there would be a moment of hesitation, and then I would just push you through the window. In a very kind way. But I really think it's just because like I would have had to do something really bad to warrant your murderous spirit.
On that note, I would not choose Corene. Yeah. I think I might also go with Liz. I feel like Liz gives like true neutral vibes that like, she could maybe do it, but she'd have to like have that malicious intent, and I just can't see her like mustering the malicious intent.
Also feel like because Liz is so diplomatic that she can like diffuse any disagreement. So I feel like she'll be a good person to have.
I don't know. Maybe after listening to our upcoming KIF episode about star signs, where you'll learn more about some of us, you might second guess that. Just
So
saying.
ominous.
Yeah, I don't know who I would pick to go with. I mean, like, yes,
She doesn't trust any of us, clearly.
sweet Fiona, but the onion. I have not seen all the layers of the onion, so I don't know if I want to risk that. Corene, Sadie. Again, I feel like Sadie's an actor. So yeah. Emma, I feel like you know too much about me, you and your star signs. Virginia. You read all those murdery books. Feel like maybe Mark, because we spent the least time together out of everybody here, and we would have like the least amount of beef, basically. Like we're clean slate. We'll start fresh. No past like grudges that may be underlying there. I feel like we get along well.
Yeah. I was originally thinking Sadie because I thought she just has too much positivity, but now I think Liz has swayed me the other way.
Part of her plan.
Emma?
Never
Emma's like,
know.
I don't know any of you yet.
Me? Yeah, I was like maybe Mark, maybe Fiona, because you're the two that I don't know as well, but also like that's the wild card, is I don't know what to expect from either of you. And then I thought Sadie, because I feel very safe with Sadie. Sadie's got like motherly and comforting energy, and I feel like I can talk to you about anything. I don't know. I might just say Virginia because no one else has said Virginia yet. And because I do feel very safe with Virginia. And I feel like if Virginia and I got in a fight, I could win. So, but I'm also a black belt. So that's the advantage that I have.
I was gonna say Emma, but after learning that fact, I don't know if I'm going to anymore.
You didn't know I'm a black belt? Yeah, I did Taekwondo for like a decade. So
I was gonna
So
say either
like,
Emma or Fiona, but yeah, I don't. That's it. Same with Emma. I feel like this could be dangerous because you can get me to open up about things really easily, but that might be a trap. So I don't know if I could trust that. And yeah, Fiona, I might just have to go with Fiona. I might have to go with Fiona.
so again, what did Corene say? What's Corene's advice? Just don't go with anyone. That's what it is. But Sadie also has some really, really good advice for us on the show. Fiona.
Back it up,
What?
back it up,
What?
Virginia. Who are you going on this island
I already
with?
said it. Mark or Liz.
Hmm.
What is that supposed to mean? What is that face? I trust those two more, I think. Maybe.
Wow.
We don't like lies here, remember? Anyway, Sadie also has provided some very, very good advice for our listeners out there. So Fiona, we're going to see if you can remember this. When talking about one of Sadie's least favorite tropes, which you have to figure out what that is, she said, you should not give your whole life and all your years to this one person. Play the field a little bit. So, Fiona, do you remember what is Sadie's least favorite trope? Well, at least one of Sadie's least favorite tropes.
Lovers through different like times in history, like reincarnated lovers. No, that's not tropey enough.
That's pretty tropey, but I think more tropey than the one that Sadie actually thinks of. How do you think about reincarnated lovers, Sadie?
I know the one you're talking about. It's close, I feel like. It like covers the same idea in a little way. I probably dislike this other one more than reincarnated lovers. Do you want me to tell people what it is? The chosen or like the soulmate destined for each other trope. And I find this funny coming from the person who's been in a long-term committed relationship for the last 15 years. Yeah. But yes, I hate the soulmate trope. Hate it. Absolutely hate it. Make your own damn decisions.
And play the field. All right, Liz. What is your existential question for your book friends today?
Okay, so this one is for the audiobook readers or those who have ever been inclined to pick up an audiobook. Are there titles you've enjoyed in audio that you likely wouldn't have picked up or completed in print? And why?
Well, I don't really listen to very many audiobooks, but it tends to be things that I don't want to dedicate like sole attention to. So it's like if I'm doing something else, I just put the audiobook on in the background, and if I miss a little bit, I'm probably not gonna miss much.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the books that I'm kind of like, I may want to read, but I don't, it's okay. Like, or I have to read because, either for the podcast or like, it's like, I feel like it's a book that I should read. I will like choose an audio book from like, if I have something that I need to do, like while I'm doing something else, then that way it's like, if I miss anything. So yeah, so it'll be like the books that I don't really care about, then they go into audiobook.
I'm kind of the same way. And I want to preface this by saying that I do really enjoy a lot of YA, but often I listen to YA books because I can like space out a little bit, miss a little bit, and then come back. And the plot's not too complicated that I can still follow along. Or just like really, really enormous books that I like. I want to, so my example is Game of Thrones, where like I want to read the book, but I've seen the show, so I don't care about actually carrying around the copy of the book. So I'll put the audio on like while I clean, and then I can miss bits and pieces of it because I know the plot from the television show. So that's one where like I will listen to the audiobook, but I probably will never read the physical books.
But there's so much more in the books. So much more.
But the audiobooks are the books. And the
You're gonna
narrators does
miss
a really,
them.
really good job.
Yeah, the narrator is great. That is true.
I'm kind of on board with everybody else. Like, definitely, if it's a long book, I know I won't get through it reading it, so I will always listen to an audio. But I had one in particular. I recently read The Woman in Me, which is Britney Spears' memoir. Um, I started out in the audiobook, read by Michelle Williams. She's a fantastic narrator. And then my hold went back and I picked up the text version, and it was just unreadable. So I went back to the audio book, and it was like Michelle Williams was what made it like digestible.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, similar to Emma and Fiona, long books definitely are books that intimidate you episode. My 40 something hour audiobook was a lot easier to take in than the I know it seems strange, but to think about reading that, think about sitting down and read that to audio, because I audiobook when I drive all the time. And so I think that it just helps it because I'm going to listen to it the whole way. And it helps if I can't get into a book because I'm going to keep listening to it. Whereas if I'm reading a book and I can't get into it, I might read the same page 10 times. But if I'm listening to the audiobook, they're going to keep talking whether I listen or not. Um, and then it gets me through, right? It gets me past whatever was stopping me from getting into the book so that I can keep listening and keep engaging. And then I will often I enjoy listening to memoirs and nonfiction as audiobooks. And I think maybe because they're not my go-to genre. And so I prefer to listen to them. And the memoirs are often narrated, not always, but by the author. And I always appreciate that.
Yeah, I love memoirs and like read by the author as well. But some of them are just like Fiona was saying about the Britney Spears book, like, sorry, no offense, but I mean, when you see it on the page, it doesn't really quite do it for you. But then when you listen to somebody who's great at being an audiobook reader, who's a trained actor, somebody who just has those skills, that talent, then it's like, oh, okay, it sounds like a conversation. It sounds like, oh, I'm telling you my life story, person to person, as opposed to this dense wall of text. There was a book that I had read previously, I talked about on the podcast, and it was the Patrick Stewart biography. And of course, I had to listen to it in audiobook. Like there was just no question about it. But I did put a hold on the print version because I wanted to see the pictures. Like what did he look like as a young man, right? Like throughout his childhood, that kind of thing. And then when I got the book and I flipped through, I was like, there was no way I was gonna read it. Sorry, Sir Pat. But yeah, like there was just no way I could have gone through it without having his melodious voice in my ears.
Corene, I'm assuming you're opting out of this audiobook question.
I am politely recusing myself from this question. I think I've only listened to about 3 audiobooks in my entire life, 2 of which were on a very long road trip when I was driving from Vancouver to Lethbridge. Yeah, I don't have the attention span for it. But I think that, as you've all said, like a really good author can like, or a really good narrator can like elevate material so much. And there is something really special to be said when someone is reading their own story, or in the case that I was reading, I was told there would be cake, like their own essays, and they just kind of put a spin on it that you wouldn't necessarily have the same experience as when you're reading.
All right. Well, we love what we love, and we all have our preferred format. And as Emma infamously say in the episode where we have to try to read a book from a favorite genre or a favorite format from a book friend, the lesson that she said we learn is that we should all stay in our lane. You sure did. Again, in those 26 episodes, you've said a lot of things that are great lines also. So, like we all have our things, right? Like, but sometimes occasionally we will like, get out of our lane. So Mark, this is a question for you. Even though you were not there for that episode, I think you will be able to figure this out. So recently our thing is that we were talking about the kind of books that we like. So two of us here would like books that are from A to B to C. So you could figure out the two people that are nodding their heads, Sadie and Corene. And then the other people that are here would be okay with books that are from A to 15 to S to Z back to Y or whatever. But occasionally, Miss Corene will read books that surprise us. And so on one of the episodes, she talks about a book, um, and so we reminded her that she read this book. And when she was like, whatever, like, like I'm gonna go pass it on to my ally Sadie, and Sadie immediately say, I'm not your ally on that on that toilet, whatever that you are talking about. And this is a book apparently you walked by Corinne's office and saw that you saw that she was reading, and you're like, huh, you're reading that, huh? Okay. And apparently I also said something to her. I was like, oh, like tell me about what you think about the first story. So Mark, do you remember what book that might be? I think you could figure it out.
Was this the Kenji Miyazawa one? No.
Korean book in
Oh,
translation.
Korean. That's the Cursed Bunny.
Cursed Bunny, that's right.
Yeah.
Cursed Bunny.
Yeah.
See, so like, Corinne occasionally will read weird stuff, even though she doesn't say she does. And she roll her eyes at all the other books. But yeah, so toilet whatever is where Sadie draws the line on this. So Miss Corrine, oh, I should ask, Fiona and Liz and Mark, which team are you on? Are you A to B to C, or are you A to 15 to S to Y?
A to 15 to S to Y, definitely.
I'm game for whatever, as long as the story's good. It depends.
Classic Liz with her diplomatic answer.
There it is. Okay, Fiona, did you say you're good with like whatever? Yeah, okay. Mark?
Probably more good with whatever.
Look at us, we have comrades.
Look at that eye rolling. All right, Miss Corrine, what is your existential question for us today?
Yes, and I'm going to just flip over to the Google Docs to make sure that I have that question. And yeah, this one I'm genuinely curious about. On Keep It Fictional, we do a lot of book recommendations, and as you know, some of them we take and some of them we don't. But I am curious for my book friends, what book would you like to force everyone, Keep It Fictional past and present, to read? So what is the one book that you would force all of us to read, with I'm assuming like kind intentions that we would enjoy it, rather than you wanting to torture 6 other people?
Like my answer is a little bit cheating, just because I know that so many of us have already read it. But I don't know if everyone has, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I think everyone, every single person in the world should read that book. Every single one.
That was. I've never admitted to you and Virginia that it's in my did not finish pile.
You're also disappointing Sadie here, Fiona. Not just me, but also Sadie. Think of that. You can disappoint me. It doesn't matter. But you're disappointing Sadie.
I do plan to have a second go at it at some point. I promise.
Can I ask why? Can I and then legitimately curious? That's not a loaded question. I'm just legitimately curious. What was it that did not draw you in?
It was the devil. Sometimes when it's like, and he's the devil. I don't know, sometimes that like literalism for me is just a no-fly zone.
Maybe try the audiobook version. I really do enjoy their books in audiobook format, so maybe give that a try. If that's your thing.
In Fiona's defense, my partner did not finish that book either. She said it was too cozy, it was too cutesy. So she was just like, no, I'm not into it. Which is funny because Kate likes a lot like cuter things than I do. So it's not an unpopular opinion.
I'm so sorry. I've derailed this in the most
unpopular
heartbreaking
here.
way.
All right. How
I feel
about
like
you,
Corene
Liz?
is holding something back. Corene, are you holding something back right now? No. Okay. Okay. Anyone else want to disappoint me and Virginia in this moment? Anybody else?
Remind me, can we pass on an existential question? I'm out of practice. Can
Well,
we
you can
say
say it depends, I
No,
guess.
choose a book. No, 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 no. Choose a book.
I hated this question so much. I was like, I can't just pick one book for everybody. That's not a thing. That's like
Yeah,
we're
you
all
think
gonna read
about
this
it.
one book.
You think about it, Liz. So I think like, again, same thing. Like, one of us needs to, on this show, as per tradition, has to purposely misinterpret the question. So I'm going to do that. So I feel like instead of, I know what Corene is getting at, but I think I'm going to interpret that question as like, what is the book that you feel like you need, like, to force yourself also to read? So I need some collective power to help me tackle this book. So I'm going to ask everybody to read House of Leaves, because I would really like to read it, but I'm scared. So if there's 6 of you would be willing to read House of Leaves with me, then yeah, I think we can do it. So let's think about stuff like that. I know Gabriel talked about it on the show, but I'm sure like there are a lot more because it's like this big, and so there's probably a lot more to it. So yeah.
Virginia, that book is 709 pages long.
Well, apparently some people can do audio book. They don't read 700-page long book, but they can read 700 hours. They can listen to that. So yeah.
700 pages doesn't even seem that long. That doesn't seem. I feel like over 1,000 is long.
It is also like super tiny print, if I remember correctly. And also sometimes you have to turn the book around to read it. So it might take a little bit longer.
Okay, I'm gonna be a broken record. I would have everybody read Dracula because I feel like it's at least like palatable. It's not gonna like make anybody mad, but it's also like a nice, literary history to have.
You're staying true to you, Fiona.
Dracula is at the center of the onion.
There's
There's your
one-liner
line
for the episode.
Yeah, there's your line.
I'll do another kind of palatable book. I think everyone should read Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I know it's a sports book, but like I didn't care about hockey before I read it, and it's filled with so many just like interesting little snippets into like the human condition and human philosophy, and it's got like wholesome moments but also some kind of sad moments, and it has a normal plot. It's not going in all different directions at all times. You meet characters and things happen to them. So I'll go with Beartown. And it makes a really good audiobook.
Yeah, I started thinking about the question in kind of a similar way. I think one that sort of settled in my mind is Thomas King's Medicine River, which I did talk about on the podcast once a long time ago. Because it has like a sort of like literary quality to it, but it's also very light. It's comedic, it's fun. It's kind of got like some like travel-y kind of aspects to it too. So it kind of has like these different elements that different people can kind of latch on to, but also has like kind of like the depth where it's not just like too cozy for certain people.
Too cozy for certain people. I wonder what people you're referring to. Corene, it's your answer.
Yeah, I forgot that I would have to answer this. I thought I was just doing the asking. And so I was like really looking through my Goodreads, and a book that I think is interesting and a writer that I really like, and I think maybe his most accessible and kind of melancholy book that has a straightforward plot but also a not straightforward plot would be Familiar Things by Hwang Sok Young, translated by Sora Kim Russell. And so he wrote the Booker nominated Mater 210, and I've talked about a couple of his books on the podcast, and this one is kind of like a maybe dystopian future, not future present. So it kind of has like a slight magical realism, but also like probably the gritty realism of a lot of people. And I think it's just like a really interesting microcosm of like a real master at the top of his game. And I always appreciate that, like someone who just really knows what they're doing and is playing with genres and conventions in a way that you're like, oh, okay, I'm in good hands. Weird stuff is going to happen. And there's going to be like these weird sprites and like gardening, but also trash piles. And I'm going to be okay with it because I'm in good hands. I'm in good hands.
And I
I
haven't
like
forgot
weird
to post it.
sprites, and gardening is also House in the Cerulean Sea.
Fiona, do you want to revisit who do you feel most safe with on that island? Anyone want to revise their answers now?
And Liz, we haven't forgotten about you, Liz. Do you have an answer to
Oh
this
gosh, darn it.
existential question?
Well, at first I approached the question like, oh, what's a book that I commonly recommend to maybe people who come into the library? But their tastes, everybody's tastes are different, and a lot of their tastes trend toward like popular fiction, which so I was like, well, what one popular book would encompass everybody. But there was a book I read recently called What by Bones Know by Stephanie Fu, and it's about her journey with dealing with complex trauma. And while maybe not all of us have dealt with complex trauma, we've all dealt with different traumas in our lives, and those can run the gamut. Like there's no judgment about what you personally find as a trauma or what's left a blemish on your life or on your heart. So I really enjoyed her book. I thought she's just so well spoken. I did listen to an audiobook. She's so well spoken. She's worked for This American Life, if you've ever listened to that. So she's a great storyteller, and she talks about her own history, but also kind of like, hey, everybody's dealt with something in their lives, and that I feel like that just as like for us as people, just like kind of opened my eyes to, hey, let's be a little bit more compassionate because we don't know what people have dealt with before, and that maybe they don't realize that these things have affected them to this day, and it manifests itself in how they behave and how they react to other people. So yeah, my serious note, but I feel like it's a good book for everybody to read. It just maybe it won't have the same effect for you, like your mileage may vary, but for me it kind of opened my eyes to that whole like, okay, yeah, we have this all in common, so let's just be a little kinder to each other.
I'm going to sneak one in from my mom, who listens to our podcast. And this one says hello to Liz. And I know that a lot of my book friends have read it, but I think the one book that from this podcast she recommends to everyone is Interior Chinatown. And I think all of us, there's a lot of us who feel really passionate about this book, that it was like a revelation. And so I think for my mom, she still talks about it, and she still really feels powerfully about like recommending it to other people. And this the podcast is where she found out about it. And so that's my mom's sneaky pick that I'm putting in there for her.
Hi, Margot.
Oh, yeah. The only five-star book, I think, Interior Chinatown, I believe, at least according to everybody's Goodreads. So yeah. So Emma and Mark, if you haven't read it yet, should get on with that. All right. So the next question was supposed to be for Liz. I think that this would be an easy one based on what we just talked about. So it's one of those titles that we talk about. But before I guess before Sadie knows about this book, when I talk about it on the show, after describing the book, she said that it is important. The only thing she took away from my talk was that it's very important that we have it on film of me saying that even the cat is lovely. So based on the books that we just talked about, what would this book be that I love so much that I will tolerate even the cats?
I feel like this should be very obvious because you read so few books with cats. Like anything with cats, you're like, no, I don't need that in my life. Was it a Murakami book? No, you said Sadie said even the cat was lovely in that. So it would have been a book that Sadie was familiar with and had read too.
We just talked about it, Liz. We just talked
did?
about it.
In this episode?
Yeah, like 5 minutes ago.
Tit.
There was a whole thing.
Fiona disappointing us.
Oh my gosh. Was there a cat in that? There was a cat in that? I don't remember the cat. Oh my gosh, I need to reread that book. I need to go back and reread it. That was in the Cerulean Sea. I don't remember the cat. I was just so fixated on the wonderful characters and the world building that Clune did that, you know, it's like cat, sprite, human, whatever. They're all great characters.
Sure. All right. So speaking of cats, Emma. I said I wasn't going to talk about cats, but I am going to talk about cats. Like we all know, again, another thing that we all know, you love cats, like everybody else here. And I appreciate your persistence in trying to show me photos of your cats, and including me in your conversation. One day I will show the appropriate response to your cat photos. I will know what to do. But you mentioned on the show, I'm gonna see if you remember the book that you talk about. But like, other than cats, there is another animal that you feel like after reading a book you appreciate a lot more of. Oh,
It's crows. I used to be terrified of crows. I'm not from Vancouver, so when I first moved here, I was like, there's crows everywhere. And they would like follow you and caw outside of your apartment. It scared me. But after reading Bad Cree by Jessica Johns, which I affectionately call like the Canada Reads winner of my heart. Didn't win Canada Reads, but it did win my heart. After reading Bad Cree, I had a newfound appreciation for crows. And now when I see like giant hordes of crows flying over me, they don't scare me anymore. So thank you, Jessica Johns, for helping me overcome my fear of crows.
Does anyone remember during the pandemic when Fiona had like a horde of crows that lived outside of their house?
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
so Fiona, would you consider reading books about chickens to get to like maybe
That's
you
an
appreciate
interesting
chickens a
eye.
little bit more?
That's an interesting idea. I feel like Corene has some suggestions
Corene has chicken books.
for both chickens.
What was the one that you talked about, Corene? Do you remember? The Susan Juby one?
Oh, the Poultry Collective. That's a delightful book. The chickens are there, but they're not really like narrative points of view. So I don't know if that will help as much.
That's like a good way to ease into it, right? You can't be like full on chicken right away. I think that was too much for Fiona, probably. Yeah.
I think, Fiona, you should be confident and proud of your fear of chickens. They're just tiny edible dinosaurs.
Okay. Do they have a, what do you call it, Sadie? A whoop-de-doo?
Whoop-de-doo.
Whoop-de-doo on top of
What
this.
my daughter refers to it now as well. The dinosaurs that have like, it's called it's a whoop-de-doo, the thing that shoots off the top of their head. Yeah, I think she's confused quite a few people though. When she's talking about the dinosaurs whoop-de-doos.
That's because it sounds for a euphemism for something else.
Oh, so I would like to know from my book friends, what, because like animals, there's animals in books that we care for. I know many of you have those, but what is an animal that you don't care to read about? Like in a fiction. I'm going to disappoint Emma right now. Horses for me. So I do not care for horses. I know, Emma, sorry. Horses and
I like
cats.
horses.
I know you do. You just mentioned it yesterday, but that's why I'm just like horses. No, no horses book. Yeah, no.
That's fair. Black Beauty. Does Black Beauty end with the horse's death? Or did I just hope for that? I hated that movie as a child so much. So much. Horses and sheep, actually, because didn't John Scalzi do like a sheep
The android. Yeah. Yep.
yeah. And I was just like, I can't. They smell so bad. And their feces are just on them, like encrusted. Because for a while I lived in a place that had sheep wandering around on the grounds, and I was just like, every time they came over the mountain, I was like, oh, could you just not like bathe?
I don't know how well horse books have stood up though, because I read a lot as a kid. I read a lot of those kind of just like horse chapter books and like the Saddle Club and stuff like that. But I haven't read any like adult horse books, so TBD on that. My animal that I will not read about, and I apologize, Virginia, is like bugs. When you talk about like cockroaches and spiders, ew, I can't do it.
I hate them as much as you do, but I just can't help it.
I'm also an arachnophobe, so I can't like anything with spiders. Like I've had to call coworkers, and I found a spider in here once in the Park Lane room, and I had to call a coworker in to help me get rid of it because I just couldn't.
Me too. That's exactly what I do. I'm like, Sarah, please. Yep.
I guess I'll just go with snakes, slithery things like that.
They wiggle so pleasantly, Mark.
Crane just enjoys the gyration of them as they dance around.
Yeah, I'll stick with chickens.
I'm starting to think you need to watch. Now, here's a question for the two of you. Have you ever seen Werner Herzog's commentary on chickens? Just hearing all this chicken hate just reminds me of him talking about how stupid he thinks chickens are.
I will look that up. I will.
What does it depend on this?
Oh no, it depends on nothing. Creepy crawlies, bugs, reptiles, slithery things. No, thank you. Horses are okay.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna go with too. Other animals I am indifferent to some, but I don't actively hate reading about them. But yeah, probably Probably spiders. Definitely spiders.
Well, I can tell you that reading spiders book do not help with dealing with spiders in real life. So yeah, anyway. All right, Sadie, what is your existential question for the group today?
All right, mine is another audiobook question, and it kind of we've talked about how some narrators by Corene have can really, really make an audiobook. That they're able to elevate the text in a way that reading it does not do. But I am curious about the opposite and how much the narrator affects whether you like a book, and have you ever switched to the print version because you did not like the book's narrator?
I can go first. The answer is yes. I like an audiobook narrator will absolutely make or break it for me. And when I first read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, I started with the audiobook and it's read by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I just couldn't. I couldn't. I got
It's
into
everyone
Hamilton
makes Sadie
whenever
angry day.
I got into Hamilton when it first came out. I outgrew that phase, and now I just can't do anything with Lin-Manuel Miranda in it. And so like I started the audiobook, wasn't gonna happen. I read the physical book and I like binge read it in 8 straight hours. I just like sat on the couch with my cat on my lap and read the book from cover to cover. Um, so it had nothing to do with the story that made me not be able to do the audiobook. It was absolutely Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice. So, and like if I
I
try
had
an
no idea
audiobook,
that he narrated that.
he did. And when he
No
like
idea.
tries to do the Spanish, it just sounds so like I don't think he's a native Spanish speaker. It just sounds clunky and I'm just like, bleh. So yes, I will absolutely put an audiobook down if the narrator, in my opinion, is not good enough.
100%. I think like I don't find ebook samples very helpful. I don't like read them, but I definitely use the sample audio on for audiobooks because I have to make sure that I can deal with that voice. Because as you said, Sadie, once you start playing it, you can't stop it. Well, you can, but like so it's just they just gonna keep talking at you. And so I have to make sure that they are um narrated. So I've definitely dropped so many audiobooks because of the narrator. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. And I think I thought initially it was like, oh, maybe you have a preference for like British accents or not. And then it's like realizing how much more in depth it is, like about how well they can get the feeling of the book and do different characters and stuff. But I had one recently, Parasol Against the Axe by Helen Oyeyemi. And I started, it's like a personification of the city, uh, Prague is like narrating it, and they had an Australian accent narrating it. And I just got so angry. I stopped the audiobook.
I think when I first started listening to audiobooks, one of the ones that I had picked out for some reason was the first in the Alan Bradley Flavia Deleuze series, Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie. I hated the narration so much. I listened to the whole thing, but I hated it because it's about the child. It's about Flavia, and just the voice they used for that child was just so, and combined with their actions, I was just like, I hate this child so much. So I never picked up another book in print or in audio from that series again. And he's up to book 12 this year. Good for you, Alan Bradley, but that just killed it for me.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest problem is when they try to do voices. Like they're not just talking their voice, they're like doing this, I don't know like what you call it. It's like an impersonation. Sounds more like than an actual character at that point. There's definitely been some that I've listened to that were like that. I think a recent one was Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, the audiobook of that. Um, I like the narrator doing her regular voice as the main character, but then doing like the old uncle character or whatever, it just didn't feel right. And when it gets like that, it just becomes more difficult because it's kind of jarring. It doesn't sound like a natural flow of character to character. It's like this weird Jolt.
Corene, are you opting out of this question?
I have nothing to say. I've listened to 3 audiobooks.
And did you stop any of them because you didn't like the narrator?
I was trapped in a car for 14 hours driving over the mountains. Although one of them was narrated, it was an Agatha Christie mystery narrated by the actor who plays Hastings in the David Suchet series. And he did all of the voices. And because he spent so much time on the TV show, he does a very credible David Suchet impression. And so he was flawless. And I didn't mind the voices that he was doing, but I think it was just because, he's a trained actor, and as you say, he wasn't like trying too hard. It was just like very natural for him to do something like that. So yeah, he was great. I would gladly, if I was trapped in a car for another 14 hours, listen to those.
Yeah, I think that I quite like when they do the character voices, but it has to be done well. It has to be like, I think that people who kind of have that training to go from character to character to character can do a really good job with it. But otherwise, yeah, I agree. I have definitely hated audiobook narrators because I feel like we've had this conversation on, do you stop reading books or do you power through with books regardless of if you like them or not? I am very much on the once I've started, I rarely don't finish a book category. And so I will usually just suffer through it and listen to the whole thing, even though I absolutely hate the narrator. There's been 2 books that I'm tempted to pick up the print version though, and might if I have more time, just to see if it's the book or if it's the narrator, because it could also, there's one that I'm fairly certain was just not a good book at all. So
Names.
The assistant to the villain. It was like I can't think of the author's name right now, but it's like a fantasy romance kind of thing. And I mean, I know the narrator was terrible. Like that is something I know. I just don't know if the book was also really bad or not.
All right. So our next question is going to go to Fiona, because Fiona, you're partial to, among other things, books with older protagonists. Right? Okay. All right. So this is something that Mark said on the show, not talking about a book protagonist, but an author. He is a most anticipated book, and he was talking about like how this particular author has recently become maybe more opening up a little bit, stop being so evasive, because he's a bit of an old man now, let's be honest here. He's not young anymore, so he better start talking. So Fiona, do you remember which author Mark is referring to?
I think I actually do, and I loved that moment because it was just so earnest. I'm pretty sure it was Murakami.
Yep. Very good, Fiona. And I guess Mark, I should ask you too. After you read that book, was that more of a review, or was he still as evasive as before?
To a certain extent, yes, but to a certain extent, no, because sometimes you would say like, "Oh, I had this idea, my editor didn't like it," and he gave me like a comment to go like, "Oh, in this direction." So then, instead of doing that, he would change in the opposite direction the editor wanted him to go in. So like, he does reveal some of these kind of interesting idiosyncrasies of how he got his books made, essentially. But at the same time, he's still saying like, "Yeah, there's like no deeper meaning. Stop looking for it."
What's that look, Corene?
What's the point?
Oh, all right. Next question. Liz. I feel like you have worked with like pretty much all of us. I feel like you have got a chance to work with most of us here. So I'm gonna see if you can, like figure out who this is. One of us on the show said, I don't want to hear about how they kill people. I want to see them kill people. And on one of the book that you described, I'll give you the book, In the Garden of Spite by Camellia Bruce. They said, if it is revenge killing, then it's okay. So they are not okay with other type of killing, but revenge killing is good. So can you remember who that is?
That was a while ago if it was that book. I feel like this might be a Fiona moment. It's because the whole revenge killing, like, justice thing.
Yep. So Fiona was talking about the Water Outlaws. That's the book for the first one when they said like I don't like to hear, I'd like to see people getting killed. So I feel like everybody needs to reevaluate that whole mansion question. Are you sure you want to hang out with Fiona in a mansion? I don't know.
Oh, I'm locked in. Locked in.
But like
I'm glad
I can still take them.
Look how conflicted they look right now.
I'm glad that we have this like recorded because I have no memory of these things.
It's okay. It's okay. Like I said, you have many great lines. So yeah. All right. I'm gonna do my existential question now. It's one that like I think oh you know my answer already, but it was we're talking about it, and then Corene and Liz think that oh that's your existential question, so I'm gonna ask it now. How much influence does a book friend's review have on whether you're gonna read a book or not? The moment of truth. You can do it. You're already disappointed, Sadie. You can tell the truth, people.
I'd say for me a lot, it does have like a lot. Like I say, I always come away with like three more books to read on my to read list. Um and keep digging my hole, but like especially if it's a like a Virginia recommended book, that usually goes a long way.
I wasn't expecting that, but thank you, Fiona. I know we said we used to play this game is like, how many of the books that we talk about during the show will show up on Fiona's Goodreads, you know. So yeah.
For me, it's something that will definitely get added to like my TBR. It's on the radar, but like there's always just so many things that like whether or not it actually makes it into the rotation is doubtful. Um, because I'm one of those people who always has the maximum number of things on hold that are like about to come out. So then unless it like it shows up in like that on order just came in kind of like serendipity almost, it's not something that's gonna get pushed to the front of the line very soon.
I can go next. And this is not just for the book friends in the room. This is like anyone that gives me book recommendations. It truly depends on who the person is because my taste is not the same as everybody's taste. So sometimes someone who like reads, like I have a friend who is a really, really great friend of mine, reads things that she really loves, but she reads a lot of like more popular, like Reese's book club picks. So if she tells me, oh, this book is so, so good, you absolutely have to read it, I'm like, yeah, probably not. But like if Virginia tells me something is really good, or if Sadie is like, this is a YA fantasy that I absolutely devoured, I'm like, yes, I trust your judgment. I will absolutely read something that you recommend to me. But it depends on the book friend and whether or not our tastes are actually in alignment. And like Mark said, like it might go on my TBR, but whether or not I actually get around to reading it is a totally different story.
Come on, Liz. Come on.
Yeah, a bit of Emma, a bit of Mark, depends on the person giving the recommendation. Are we sort of like reading twins, reading cousins, even reading second cousins, maybe? Yeah, do I have any interest in the book, beyond their glowing recommendation? And then like what Mark was saying for the serendipitous aspect of it, like what do I feel like? How do I feel today? What do I want to read? Does it kind of fit in sort of that reading phase that I'm in? Is the book available right now? I want it now or I don't want it now. Yeah. Basically, if Mercury is not in retrograde and the stars all align, then yeah, I might pick up that book.
I'm going to say because I don't have a very strong particular brand of book that I like, I'll kind of try a little bit of everything if there's something that appeal. And I think there's like we often talk about like Venn diagrams of circles where we intersect with other people. And so there's definitely like genres that people read here that I also share with them. And so if it's something that they recommend, I might not go and pick it up, but if I'm in the mood for something like that, like a YA mystery or something like that, I'm like, okay, like let me poke around and oh, this seems familiar because Sadie talked about it. I'll give it a try. For Mark's, definitely a bunch of authors that you've mentioned. I kind of like go and pick up. Fiona, there's things in common. Liz in common. And Emma as well. Like I think manga is something that we kind of share together. And so every once in a while there'll be something that like usually it's a plot. Like if someone's plot if there is one. Usually it's something about the plot that someone says that kind of connects. And then as ever, there's usually only one book in the entire year that Virginia and I agree on. Um, Only one. Just one. Every couple of years, there's a book that we both agree that is truly spectacular, and that's usually a book that I like a lot. But it's not maybe necessarily that I take the recommendations, but if someone mentions that author or mentions that story, if I come across it again, I'll be like, oh yeah, I know a little bit about this from how someone's book talked it, and I'll be willing to give it a chance.
Yeah, I think a lot of them definitely end up on my TBR, just like in the moments, like, oh, that sounds interesting. That a couple things that sound like I might be interested in it, but if whether I read them or not is not always, it doesn't always happen. But I think, and this is, I think it's just because in the Venn diagrams, Green, you and me have, at least for my taste, maybe not necessarily for yours, but like for mine, there's a lot more things that cross over. So I think that I've probably, if you look at the books that I have read that have been recommended, I probably have more books recommended by you that I have actually ended up reading and enjoyed than other people. But then me and Virginia, there are the couple that we do. So I definitely, and I think House in the Cerulean Sea was
the
one
one.
that Interior Chinatown as well. I read that one because you recommended it. And actually, Traveling Cat Chronicles. I read that one because Liz mentioned it at some point. Maybe not on the podcast, but I think that you did mention it. So I have definitely taken recommendations from people, but I think more often they just kind of go on my TBR, and then if I'm looking for something, then maybe I'll find my way back to it.
I think I've said it on the podcast. I don't do well with recommendations, as you all know. So I'm not open to suggestions. I think all of you are so much more open to suggestions. There's there's one person here that I trust and I listen to, and I will read whatever they tell me to read. You know who you are. But other than that, for the other people,
Yeah, it's Mark.
Okay.
It's Mark. Just say it. It's fine. We can all deal with this.
For the other people, I have to say though, if a book is already on my radar, then if I hear a book friend talk about it, sometimes it might move up a little bit on my list, and I am reading it. So under those like very controlled conditions, all of you have influence on my reading there.
Very diplomatic.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, thank you for answering that question, and thank you for being so honest, all of you. Uh, Sadie, this is a question for you. So we talk about like how just now, we will potentially trust our book friends sometimes. But Emma would know that she said that she would definitely not trust people on the internet or people on Goodreads because they don't know what genres are, according to Emma. So Sadie, it was one of your episodes that you hosted. Do you remember what is the book that led her to discover that, you should not trust people on the internet?
Was it the Crane Among Wolves? It was for the fantasy or the historical fantasy episode that it was just historical fiction and had no
There was
fantasy
no
elements
magic.
to it whatsoever. No fantasy.
Everyone on Goodreads was like, I read and you could tell by the review that they actually read the book. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm putting this on my to be read shelf. They were all like, yeah, this book was so great. This is how it ended, historical fantasy. And there was not a single drop of magic in that entire book. I don't understand why like grown ass people don't understand what fantasy is.
No, so it's interesting because I disagree with a bit of that. I don't think that it needs to have magic for it to be fantasy. That is something that I do not agree with. I don't think it needs to have magic for it to be fantasy. I think there are other ways.
Hold on. Corene, what do you think fantasy is? Because of the faces that you're
talking
making.
about, Sadie? What is your definition of fantasy?
It can have fantastical elements, but that doesn't have to be magic. Like, I wouldn't necessarily call like dragons magic or vampires magic. I don't think magic is you're casting spells. You're that is, in my mind, that is magic. And so it does not have to have that in order to be fun. And I don't know the book, but I 100% am with Emma on if it didn't have like any fantastical elements, then it's not fantasy. But I don't think that a book has to have magic for it to be considered fantasy.
What is a book with dragons then?
Mythical creatures. It doesn't have to be magic.
Mythical creatures means fantastical.
No,
so
it means
book
it
with
doesn't
dragons.
exist.
What genre is the book with dragons then?
Fantasy. Does not necessarily mean magic.
Dragons are not necessarily magic. And so maybe it's just a difference in what the definition I think of as magic and other people think of as magic. But to me, when I think about magic, it involves spells. It involves casting things. It involves being able to like affect people without like by pointing your finger at them. And so like to me, magic is witches. Magic is like that kind of thing. Whereas I think that there's a whole other part of the fantasy genre that does not have magic in it, but is still considered fantasy.
So, Sadie, I hear your definition of magic. I think magic was the wrong word for me to use in my emotional little burst that I had. This book did not have any magic in it. It also had no dragons. It also had no spell casting, no vampires, no fantastical elements, no mythical creatures of any kind. It was a historical fiction that took place in medieval Korea. There were like assassins, there was a murder mystery plot, but people fought with weapons. People did not fight with powers. Or like in the animals were real animals. They traveled on horseback. Like it was just a historical fiction, but because it took place in like a medieval time period, people on the internet just assumed that meant it was a fantasy because I think they associate medieval with fantasy rather than like fantastical with fantasy. So I hear your definition. This book was still not a fantasy, and people on Goodreads are wrong.
Completely fair.
The book was very good, though, for those who haven't read A Crane Among Wolves. Fun little YA.
Liz and Fiona, you want to weigh into this?
I was just gonna say I listened to that episode and it was a great episode. And it had me thinking about so many things like, is Philippa Gregory like historical fantasy? Is George R.R. Martin historical fantasy? And like, yeah.
Actually, I have a question for you, Fiona. Do you consider like what genre is Dracula? Is Dracula fantasy?
I guess it's science fiction, but I feel like the line for science fiction is really like, yeah, because I think like maybe the uncanny is like science fiction.
Okay, throwing this back to Sadie then. What's the difference between science fiction and fantasy?
As someone who does not actually read a lot of science fiction, I don't know if I can answer this.
Well,
But like more futuristic, I feel like science fiction is often more futuristic, more, I don't know, like in my mind, it like at the very, very basic, and this is like 10 years ago, Sadie, thinking about it in this way, so I don't know if I 100% believe this, but like it was the difference in my mind between like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. And so Star Wars I would see as science fiction, Lord of the Rings I would see as fantasy. And I don't know if that explains it at all, but I am sticking with it.
If I call
Well, it's like the
Dracula horror, do I just avoid this dichotomy?
Maybe. Mark, what did you want to weigh in?
I was gonna say because science fiction is more like science is in the title for a reason. Like it's based on things that are recently developed, like it's progressing, whereas fantasy tends to have like a more traditional, like, oh, this is like our knowledge of the history, like of our clan or like those kinds of things. Um, you can probably find like examples that don't follow that, but I think generally speaking, it kind of goes along those lines.
Is it like the Isaac Asimov quote that any sufficiently advanced technological society views their tech, like people before it view that as magic and people just see it as a matter of fact? Yeah. Anyways, I feel like we simply do not have enough time to really delve into this. But thank you for again breaking my mind, Sadie.
All right. Well, even though these people may not trust me to recommend books to them, but there are on one episode, apparently, they said that they will let me experiment on them if they can get free tuition. Corene, it's a book that you talk about. You talk about a book, and so two people here, well, one of them is not here, but two people here said that they would let me experiment on them if they can get free tuition.
And I'm supposed to guess which people?
What book it is. Oh yeah, you can guess anything you like. The people that
Oh,
yeah.
shoot.
It's from the Dark Academia episode.
Dark Academia, yeah. Oh, okay, so it's not Emma. Thanks. Thanks for that hint. Oh, shoot. I do remember this because it made me Catherine House. Yeah, Catherine House, because I remember vehemently thinking, no, like get a student loan. Like go to the bank and ask for some extra money. Don't let people choppity chop with your head. Like that's bananas. Okay. And then the two people that would I want to say Gabriel, even though they're not here. Yeah. Gabriel and I want to say maybe Mark. I don't think it was me. Definitely not me. Yeah, Gabriel and I don't think Sadie would do it either. No. No, and you were there. So just Fiona like, was it me? And I don't think it was Liz. I don't know. I don't know who the other person is.
There's only one other person right there.
Liz? Liz?
Fiona.
Fiona. Fiona.
Yeah. Free
Apparently.
tuition. One day I'm gonna come
Fiona.
to your house, Fiona, and I'll just be like, hey, you promised me that I can experiment on you.
Like $5,000 to go inside of your head. Like, have some respect for yourself.
Tuition is like more than $5,000, I feel like these days.
50,000
Per semester.
Yeah.
Are you going to university?
America.
All right, Emma, our last existential question for the day.
All right, so I had to crowdsource for this one because I was having trouble coming up with one. So, courtesy of my friend Jillian, she would like to know, do you prefer always having a book prepared to read next, like something on your TBR or something on your holds list, or do you vibe it out and read whatever you're in the mood for? So, in short, are you like a prepared reader where you have stuff in mind, or are you more a mood reader?
Whatever the KIF spreadsheet tells me.
If you didn't have to read for KIF, if you didn't have
okay.
to read a very specific genre within specific parameters for the pod, what would you go for? Or like when we have those like 2-week hiatuses where we're doing books we're looking forward to episodes, what books do you read then?
Whatever the KIF spreadsheet tells me to read for the next month. No, joking. Um, even without the KISS spreadsheet, I am a prepared reader. I prefer to have things prepared. I have a very, very long TBR, as I'm sure all of us do. And so I will often maybe not necessarily have like the next book in line, but I will always go to that and figure it out. However, I am probably more of a mood reader than I used to be. I think we asked this question maybe in our very first KIF episode about whether we were mood readers, and I said definitely not. But I have definitely now, if I have a book and it doesn't really feel like something I want to read, I will put it down and pick something else up. But I tend to be much more prepared and at least have a few books on the side that I know that I can go to.
I do both at the same time. I always have like Storygraph has like an up next feature that I like to use to like put things I've been thinking about. I always make sure that I have more than enough audiobooks taken out in case there's a bad narrator or whatever, like I've got them lined up. But then I pull a Liz and am like, oh, I've got the next 5 books lined up. Let's throw that to the wind and like pick up this one with the nice cover.
I'm like that too. Like I have a TBR. I add stuff to it occasionally, but then I'll like be out with a friend and they'll be like, "Oh, that book is so good. You should read it." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I grab it and then I read it. So like I have a TBR, but I'm never loyal to the TBR. If I was left to my own devices without being restricted by the parameters of the spreadsheet, I would just read like whatever my heart tells me in the moment. I'm an impulsive person, so I kind of just go for whatever I feel like in the moment. So very much a mood reader.
I do just want to say, Virginia, I love the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is wonderful. I truly do. Thank you for the
Thank
spreadsheet.
you.
This is not me hating on the
Thank you.
spreadsheet. This is just me not liking restrictions.
Thank you. The spreadsheet frees up your mind for other things. I don't know what you're talking about.
Is the spreadsheet talking through you at this moment?
Maybe. Is that fantasy or science fiction?
Well, it's a computer, so it's obviously science fiction.
Unless it's some ancient entity that's speaking through the spreadsheet to speak through
It's an old
Virginia.
ledger that you found in like a basement somewhere.
Or either way.
Well, anyways, I typically will read whatever comes up my holds list next. Because if there's like all those things that you have on order or that you've been looking forward to that's been on hold for like 6 months, it's finally in type of stuff. Or if it's something that I bought because I know I really want to read the author's book and I'm gonna like it, so I'll just buy it instead of waiting for it. Then things like that too. If I have one of those available, I usually go to it next.
I'm kind of a book hoarder in that I always have so many things on hold, like many of us do. I always have so many advanced copies. And then I'm always looking for new things. So I feel like I'm constantly just collecting all of these things. And then when the book I'm currently reading is about to run out, then I go, okay, what is the shiny thing that's going to attract my attention next? So it could be something completely not from any of those areas. It's just something, hey, I just saw that on the new book display as I was walking by, so let's read that today. And then the TBR, sorry, TBR, it's not happening.
Other than Thursday nights, which are reserved for reading a book, I would say that I'm a mood reader as to when I read, because I usually tend to sit down and read an entire book. So that's my preferred way of reading. I don't like reading it over several days. I don't like doing that. I just sit down and read the entire thing. So I usually have like a ton of books at home from the library or books that I've purchased that I haven't read yet. And so when kind of like the mood strikes, I'll just grab one of those that I know I'm interested in and sit down. Because again, if I start it, I'm finishing it. So it's good to have something handy.
Well, I mean, again, you all know my answer, spreadsheets. That's what I do whatever the spreadsheet tells me to do, my personal one and the KIF one. Yeah, so, and then just like having a options, knowing what the options are, and then just kind of reordering it as books come along and see what Yeah, so there's a little bit of reordering, but also like I'll also plan out at the same time. So anyway, yes, I know I can see you rolling your eyes, Miss Corene. Just be prepared to roll your eyes a few more times in the next couple of minutes. This is a question, as you can see, we have got many shocking revelations on the show about our book friends, sometimes about ourselves. There's so many things that we discover that are just like, people do that? What? And so that happens a lot of times. And there are a few things that we keep mentioning, like, a few more times than the others. Sadie knows what I'm talking about. But I'm going to go to you next, but we're going to go to Mark first. Mark, I think one of the things that we keep bringing back, at least Corene and I keep bringing back, is that you do not like Deco Edge book, which confuse us a lot. So, but one day when we were talking about it again, you actually hold up the book that you were reading that day and show us that you read a Deco Edge book. And so my question for you is, do you remember what that book is? And also, what is the one thing that you said these Deco Edge books have as an advantage over, what do you call the other kinds? Regular edge?
Straight edge?
Boring edge? The
Easy edge?
easy edge books? Okay, yeah.
So the question was, what book
Mhm,
was it?
mhm.
Was it Ravelstein?
So clearly you only have read one Deco Edge ever. That's why you remember it.
There's only like one or two that I can think of that are recent.
Mhm. Right?
Was that the one?
Yes, that is the
Yeah, I
one.
thought so.
Very
So
good.
I was thinking, okay, well, that one I know I've read for the podcast. So I was like, okay, it's probably that one.
Mhm.
And then there's something about an advantage to
what
it.
is the advantage that you said? You admit that there's one thing that is better than regular straight edge books.
I don't remember that part. Um,
You're like, there are no advantages.
was it that they're already like kind of tattered, so like it you don't notice the damage on the page as much? I don't know.
Nope. Is that you said you don't get as much paper cuts from a Deco Edge book. So
I think I might have been trying to be conciliatory at the time because I don't remember that.
I
Is
have
it on tape
again,
somewhere?
I have it on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm just saying I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you know that I'm gonna have to ask you this question. Ask everybody this question. Speaking of edges, we know these days it's all about those spray edges. You all know how I feel about them. So I would love to know, how do you feel about these, I don't know, spray edges or whatever you call them? I hate them, obviously, as you can tell, for so many reasons.
I don't
Why
remember
bother?
I don't see the point.
You put it on the shelf, it's fine out. You're not gonna see those pages.
I think I see people now putting it like actually the other way around, like the bookshelves, like they're now showing off the edges by shelving the books this way.
But then you can't see what book it is.
I don't
mean,
think
like,
it
you might know
matters. It's
based on the
not about
color.
the books. I'm
It's
pretty
like a
sure.
weird interior design trend that's going on. I had a friend who posted a picture and all of her bookshelves were like that. And I think it was Eileen actually who told me about like this weird interior design trend where, yeah, you put all your books pages out. Yeah, I honestly I could care less. I'm rather indifferent to them. I don't care one way or another. I'm kind of in the why bother side of things, but I don't actively hate them.
You can see it though when you're like actually reading the book. Like when it's open, you can see like the edge of the page still when you're reading it. So there is like some practicalness to it. But whether or not you want to see like a mauve purple edge when you're like reading your romance book. I don't know. It doesn't really add anything for me personally.
To be
Well,
honest, I'm
I
not.
think it's fun.
Fiona,
I'm
were you
not
going
sure
to
that
say
I
something?
know. I'm not sure that I know what we're talking about. So either like I just don't care to the point that I haven't even noticed. Is it like, are they ever gold? Oh, yeah. Eh.
Wait, I think I have a picture from that I have of one. Just give me a second.
If they're gold, I'll do it. Otherwise, I don't care.
Why? Why? What was the difference about gold ones?
I like shiny things, especially on books.
It's fun. It's fun. It's cute. But I like books as objects. I buy a lot of books. I collect a lot of books, and so like I just find it like a fun little thing, fun little surprise because I'm not a psychopath, and so I usually put them so the spines are spacing out so I can see what they are. And so I just kind of like it's like a little secret surprise.
Like I've seen copies of Death Note where the edges are black, and like that I don't mind because it kind of goes with the vibe of the book. But the new TJ Klune book where the edges are this like kind of ugly mustard yellow color, and that color like isn't on the cover of the book at all, that I don't understand. I thought that was just a poor design choice.
It's also not practical because, again, my stupid book, all the pages, they're stuck together because of this stupid etching. And I try to open this book, and it's just like you have to unpeel every single page, and it make that sound, which I hate. And I'm so angry that I haven't even touched the book that I got on release day because I cannot deal with it. Anyway, okay, I will stop ranting about that. All right, but be prepared for a rant. Last not little, last very big moment. Another shocking revelation that comes up so many times, so many times, is the book buying habits that we discovered about one another. Now, I think listeners all know what I'm talking about. We have discovered that, and Sadie, I'm gonna say I understand. I do the same thing. I get it. But occasionally, like when people buy books, they don't always start with the first book because sometimes you already read it, or sometimes other people gifting books to you, and they start like by giving you number five. That's just how it is. And of course, that shocked one person, I want to say, one specific person. But Sadie try to redeem herself, did mention two series that she bought that are complete. She has two complete series. I'm sure you have more than that, maybe. But at least two that you mentioned on the show. Sadie, do you remember what they are?
So I know one is, I don't know if this is counted as one or two series though. So the Lee Bardugo, I have the Shadow and Bone and the Six of Crows ones. And then was the second one Little Blue Truck? Yeah. Yeah. See, I buy books for my daughter in order. Have all of those ones.
Oh, so yes, I feel like that is probably the thing that we probably mentioned the most. We should retire that one. I feel like we've done 200 episodes of that. We need to retire that. We have to pick on something else now. I'm sure there will be things that come up that will shock Corene. That's not that hard. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you to all of you for sharing these keep it fictional moments with all our listeners.
All right. Well, it wouldn't be a true throwback episode of Keep It Fictional without a bit of a mini game for us to play and for you to play along at home. We have put 7 random books into a Google document. I will be reading the blurbs from these I'm going to say books generously. And you are going to choose which of our book friends has chosen this book. Just like a slight nod, is this all a book that you have read? Okay. So this is all books that we have read that, according to the rules of this particular game, had to kind of be like within our wheelhouse. So it couldn't be something like way out there, like Virginia really sits down and reads just like a character book in prose going like a love story that spans the ages, or Sadie chooses like soulmates over time and in space. Yeah, so it had to be something that's kind of us, that we could guess. So I'm going to read these 7 kind of publishers blurbs, hopefully without too much rancor in my voice. And then everyone is going to kind of put in their votes, and we will see how well do we know our book friends. So I'm going to read through them. You can kind of make your guesses. And then at the very end, we will kind of reveal our votes of who we think this is, and as well as who it actually is. So to keep this as fair as possible, and so that we cannot, by process of elimination, figure out who this is. So does everyone have a pen, piece of paper in front of them? Okay. Is everyone ready? Everyone's got their writing utensil. Everyone is ready to play this game. All right. Our first book is The Lockmaster by Christopher Ransmayr. And it has been blurbed as a suspenseful novel that delves into the complexities of a father-son relationship and the timeless themes of guilt and forgiveness. A longboat plummets over the Great Falls, oh, come on, man, drowning the 5 passengers on board. The Lockmaster, the heir to an ancient title and responsible for guiding river traffic safely around this natural barrier on the White River, ought to have prevented this tragedy. His son is convinced that it was not an accident. Is his irascible father a murderer? Oh, actually, this does sound good. A hydraulic engineer all too familiar with the brute force of rivers, he sets out to discover the truth and find his missing father. The Lockmaster is a dramatic tale set in a world where water has become a precious commodity, and Europe has fractured into warring ethno-nationalist entities, desperate to uphold the traditions and insignia of a so-called glorious bygone era. Christopher Ransmayr recounts this story in his trademark style, its epic force shot through with visions of future technology, good hint, and reactionary politics amid a climate breakdown. At heart, though, this novel is the story of a father-son relationship straddling the fault lines between past and present, and an exploration of timeless questions of guilt and forgiveness. Ooh, does everyone have a good...
I just need to ask, who's the anonymous hyena who's like jumping around the document? It's very distracting. The hyena is like,
The hyena can't sit still. It might be me because I'm scrolling through it. I love Mysteria. Okay. Does anyone have any? Everyone feels kind of confident. Actually, I need to write something down. Okay. No, okay. All right. Our second book is Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. Misha knows that chasing success in Hollywood can be hell. But finally, after years of trying to make it, his big moment is here, an Oscar nomination. And the executives at the studio for his long-running streaming series know just the thing to kick his career to the next level. Kill off the gay characters for the algorithm in the upcoming season finale. Misha refuses, but he soon realizes that he's just put a target on his back. And what's worse, monsters from his horror movie days are stalking him and his friends through the hills above Los Angeles. Maybe don't go to the hills. Haunted by his past, Misha must risk his entire future before the horrors from the silver screen find a way to bury him for good. All right, get your guesses in. Oh no. Okay, no. Sorry, let me just make some adjustments. Our next book is Half Breed by Maria Campbell. An unflinchingly honest memoir of her experience as a Métis woman in Canada, Maria Campbell's Half Breed depicts the realities that she endured and, above all, overcame. Maria was born in northern Saskatchewan, her father the grandson of a Scottish businessman and Métis woman, a niece of Gabriel Dumont, whose father fought alongside Riel and Dumont in the 1885 rebellion. Her mother, the daughter of a Cree woman and French-American man. This extraordinary account, originally published in 1973, bravely explores the poverty, oppression, alcoholism, addiction, and tragedy Maria endured through her childhood and into her early life, underscored by living in the margins of a country pervaded by hatred, discrimination, and mistrust. Laced with spare moments of love and joy, this is a memoir of family ties and finding an identity in a heritage that is neither wholly indigenous or Anglo, of strength and resilience, of indomitable spirit. And it was really good. All right. Get your votes in. Get your votes in. All right. Our next book is Almond by Sun Won Pyung. This is a story in short about a monster meeting another monster. One of the monsters is me. Yunjae was born with a brain condition called alexithymia, which makes it hard for him to feel emotions like fear or anger. He does not have friends. 2 almond-shaped neurons located deep in his brain have seen to that. But his devoted mother and grandmother aren't fazed by his condition. Their little home above his mother's used bookstore is decorated with colorful post-it notes that remind him when to smile, when to say thank you, and when to laugh. Yunjae grows up content, even happy, with his small family in this quiet, peaceful space. Then on Christmas Eve, Yunjae's 16th birthday, everything changes. A shocking act of random violence shatters his world, leaving him alone and on his own. Struggling to cope with loss, Yunjae retreats into silent isolation until troubled teenager Gon arrives at his school and begins to bully him. Against all odds, tormentor and victim learn they have more in common than they realized. Gon is stumped by Yunjae's impassive calm, while Yunjae thinks he might get to know the hot-headed Gon. He might be able to learn how to experience his true feelings. Drawn by curiosity, the two strike up a surprising friendship. As Yunjae begins to open up his life to new people, including a girl at school, something slowly changes inside of him. And when Gon suddenly finds his life in danger, it is Yunjae who will step outside of every comfort zone he has created to perhaps become a most unlikely hero. The emissary meets the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime in this poignant and triumphant story about how love, friendship, and persistence can change a life forever. All right. We're getting into it. The Phoenix Crown. Let me just write something down. Okay. The Phoenix Crown by Janie Chang and Kate Quinn. San Francisco, 1906. In a city bustling with newly minted millionaires and scheming upstarts, 2 very different women hope to change their fortunes. Gemma, a golden-haired, silver-voiced soprano whose career desperately needs rekindling, and Suling, a petite and resolute Chinatown embroideress who is determined to escape an arranged marriage. Their paths cross when they are drawn into the orbit of Henry Thornton, a charming railroad magnate whose extraordinary collection of Chinese antiquities includes the fabled Phoenix Crown, a legendary relic of Beijing's fallen summer palace. His patronage offers Gemma and Suling the chance of a lifetime, but their lives are thrown into turmoil when a devastating earthquake rips San Francisco apart and Thornton disappears, leaving behind a mystery reaching further than anyone could have imagined, until the Phoenix Crown reappears 5 years later at a sumptuous Paris costume ball, drawing Gemma and Suling together in one last desperate quest for justice. All right. Uh-oh, I might have to redo some things. Okay. I hate this. Masters of the Nefarious Mollusk Rampage by Pierre Le Police, author, Luke Burns, translator. Okay. A graphic novel about 2 supernatural crime fighters and their Rorschach-blotted best friends stumbling into a plot and mystery that possibly only they can unravel, but they might not, especially if they can't stay on task. Between journeys to Uganda, primordial Earth, and the Pants Store, and confrontation with ghosts frozen in ice cubes, baby turtles, and an army of small, sinister men. The trio will be tested like never before as they search for clues, answers, and a good all-you-can-eat buffet spot. Truly one of the great trials in life. All right. Okay. Ooh, and our very last one. Everyone in this room will someday be dead by Emily Austen. Gilda, a 20-something lesbian, cannot stop ruminating about death. Desperate for relief from her panicky mind and alienated from her repressive family, she responds to a flyer for free therapy at a local Catholic church and finds herself being greeted by Father Jeff. who assumes that she's there for a job interview. Too embarrassed to correct him, Gilda is abruptly hired to replace the recently deceased receptionist Grace. In between trying to memorize lines to Catholic Mass, hiding the fact that she has a new girlfriend, and erecting a dirty dish tower in her crumbling apartment, Gilda strikes up an email correspondence with Grace's old friend. She can't bear to ignore the kindly old woman who has been trying to reach her friend through the church inbox, but she also can't bring herself to break the bad news. Desperate, she begins impersonating Grace via email. But when the police discover suspicious circumstances surrounding Grace's death, Gilda may have to finally reveal the truth of her mortifying existence. Rough. All right. Does everyone have their picks in? Okay, so I'll just go over them one more time to make sure you've got the numbers right, because I definitely don't. All right, so number 1 on our list was Maybe Don't Go on a Longboat Because It Sucks. The Longmaster by Christopher Rainsmere. Our second book was Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. Great name. Book number 3 was Half-Breed by Maria Campbell. Book number 4 was Almond. Book number 5 was The Phoenix Crown. And book number 6 was Mollusk Rampage. Book number 7, Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, which is a great note to end off the podcast and a bit of a grim sentiment for our 200th episode. All right. Let's look at book number 1, Maybe Dad's a Murderer, but doesn't matter because the world is ending. Who do we think chose The Lockmaster by Christopher Ransmeyer, which I definitely have been pronouncing incorrectly the entire time? Any guesses?
Was it Mark?
I also wrote Mark.
I too wrote Mark.
I guessed Mark.
All right, Mark, would you like to say that verbally for those listening?
Yes, that was me.
And what did you like about this book?
It was just the strangeness of the world, like how there's like these water syndicates and the main character is an engineer and essentially makes him like a giant, like really important person in the world because engineering is now like crucial to maintaining like the water supply and like providing energy and all this different kind of things. Um, so just sort of seeing those kinds of aspects of it and like the father-son aspect wasn't like too overbearing. I find sometimes those kinds of stories get a little too convoluted in relationships, but I feel like it was just the right sort of balance.
Nice. Yeah. All right. It was definitely the glumness of the entire situation. I was like, this is a Mark one. All right. Our next book was Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. Does anyone want to put in their guesses?
Is this an Emma book?
I guess Liz.
I put down, see, Emma and Liz, I had the hardest time figuring out. Really, really tough. I went Emma for this one, but oh, my heart, I also had Liz.
See, I don't know Fiona's taste that well, so I put Fiona for this one because I feel like you and I both like queer literature. But this was not an Emma book, so it must be a Liz book.
I put Fiona as well, but since Fiona guessed somebody else, then
Yeah,
probably not
My
Fiona.
TBR.
by process of elimination, it must be Liz.
It was the Liz book.
Didn't say anything because I know it's Liz. So
Yeah. I mulled it over with Virginia. Yeah, I just finished listening to the audiobook version of this, and I really enjoyed it. It had sort of an ensemble cast. Most of it was read by one specific narrator, but the ensemble bits did have other like famous people, including Stephen Graham Jones and T.J. Klune. I have no idea which character each of them voiced, but I'm curious to find out. But yeah, a bit of horror, bit of murdery stuff, bit of sort of like a science fiction aspect to it, bit of social commentary. It was just a real kind of a mixed bag, which I was down for. So yeah, it was a good one.
It does sound like an Emma book for those that put me down.
Yeah, I have it literally Emma scratched out, Liz scratched out, Emma. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. All right. Our next book was Half Breed. Who I put down Fiona.
I also did.
Absolutely, Fiona.
I had Liz, but since Liz was the last
Yeah.
one, I switched it to Fiona in the last 5 seconds.
My initial guess was Liz, but this must be Fiona because I mixed you two up.
Yes, this was indeed me. I know it's like not completely my wheelhouse, but I thought Canadian content, memoir. I have a lot of the but Liz has the crossover with memoir as well. It's just really just earnest and so engaging. Like one I highly recommend to anybody.
Nice. All right. Our next book is Almond.
Green.
Green.
Because you
Green.
talk about this on the show. If you haven't,
I Googled the stupid spreadsheet.
you talk about this on the show. So,
God dang it.
you
I
know.
looked in the spreadsheet and it wasn't on the spreadsheet. So there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really love this book. I did have like some BTS content, obviously, and that is the one that they read when they were in the soup. Both RM and Yoongi read it, and so yes, I really love this book quite a lot and think about it still to this day. Speaking of someone else who really played into their brand, our next book is The Phoenix Crown. Any guesses on who that might be?
Sadie.
Oh no, who is
Sadie.
this one? Sadie.
Yes, yeah, this is me. I think I've also mentioned this in a most anticipated episode, but I did not say I'd read it yet, so it could have been somebody else. Yeah, you never know. But yes, it follows all of my lovely historical fiction, which I don't always talk about on the show, but it is one of my favorite genres of looking back and looking forward and all of those things. So it was had a good mystery to it, had good characters, and was a interesting co-writing experience as well. And they end I listened to the audiobook of this one, and it's so they have two actors doing the voices, one that kind of does mainly does Suling, one that mainly does Gemma, and then each of them do a couple other chapters and characters as well. But they kind of talk about at the end, they have interview with both Jenny Chang and Kate Quinn about how they wrote the book and like their writing process and kind of why they wrote it, and that was also very interesting to listen to.
Nice. I always think it's really cool, like the entire process of co-authoring a book. And it's really neat because, Kate Quinn's such a huge name and Janie Chang has like several great books to her name and just like a really cool combination of writers, one who does mostly fantasy and then one who kind of crossed over to play in another genre. So yeah. All right. Okay. Ghosts frozen in ice cubes. I wonder who that could be. Did anyone guess not Virginia?
It was Mollusk Rampage that really gave it away.
Yes.
Guess who told me about that book? Yeah. So
But I haven't read it yet.
I know, but yeah, it's one of the most hilarious and banana pants book that I have read this year. Probably the top. Like I laughed so hard at it, and I was telling Mark I keep like trying to stop myself from texting him every single like panel because it was just hilarious. Yeah, and
Featuring car flavored chips.
driving the car flavored
Car
chips.
flavored chip.
Yeah,
I have to ask,
see,
who are the
Fiona
small,
gets
sinister
it.
men?
Fiona gets it. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was great. It was so good. It was just hilarious. And of course, like I passed it on to someone else in my house and they're just like, okay, sure. Because I was laughing so hard and they were just like, what are you reading? And then they read it there. Because it takes about 15 minutes to read it. And same thing, I'm sure Corene, same face Corene is giving me, just like what? I don't get it. But yeah, it was hilarious. And I thought like, it has to be banana pants. So, that kind of makes sense.
You did stay true to you.
As I said to Liz, we're not trying to trick people.
Oh, I think we were very honest, very honest. Which means by process of elimination, everyone in this room will someday be dead. So Emma, talk about this book.
I love a problematic lesbian. And I think Fiona said it earlier, like a book that has no plot to it. like a book that's kind of about nothing. I love a page turner that's about nothing. And Emily Austen has this uncanny ability to just like, I keep reading and I keep reading and I keep eating it up, but like I can't tell you the plot points that have happened in this book because there really isn't a lot. Like she goes to the Catholic Church, she works at the church, things ensue, like misunderstandings ensue, but it's just it's fun. I kind of like the way that she's kind of gradually digging her own pit of like Gilda ends up getting buried under all of these lies. I think Virginia read this book as well and you enjoyed it. But it's really, really fun. And I recently read Emily Austen's other book, Interesting Facts About Space, which is kind of like equally really interesting, but also very much about nothing. But it's about like kind of the mental illness of the character and how she like gradually gets herself into these pits. But it's very, very funny. It's like equally very, very dark and very, very funny. So that's what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, I remember almost dying of like secondhand embarrassment when Virginia was doing the book talk of it the first time. Just like, you don't need to impersonate the dead lady. Just, you can make a choice not to.
She can't help herself. She's like, I can't break it to this woman. I can't bear the picture of her being devastated about the loss of her friend. So she just continues to lie. It's so funny. I would recommend it to anyone.
Sometimes you need to just forward on that email to someone a little bit higher up in the organization and they can deal with it. Gilda.
There is one other person in the organization. It is Pastor Jeff, who hired this girl. She walked up thinking she was getting free therapy, and he was like, "Hey, you want a job? Cool, you have a job." And then when she showed up for her first day of work, he goes, "What's your name, by the way?" So, not a lot of organization going on at this Catholic church.
And how do you not remember the name Gilda, right? Like Gilda. Like I think Emily Austen.
Emily,
yeah.
she gives her protagonists these kind of like weird old lady names that are like so like in the second book, the protagonist is Enid. And then there's a character named Edna. Like they all have these kind of ugly old lady names, and I love them.
Nice. All right. So on our quiz of how well do we know our book friends, did anyone get all of them right? Hey!
It was a little
Well,
easier once they started falling into place.
yeah. The only two I really was going back and forth on was the second and the last one. I had Liz and Emma like flipped. I was like, okay, the last one sounds a bit more like Emma than the second one, so I'll go that way.
I had Liz and Fiona flipped, but other than
So we are going to be wrapping up this very special 200th episode with a final existential question that I am dropping upon my book friends. And that is, what is something that you have learned about yourself doing this podcast? And everyone's looking very pensive.
You only know so much, so you gotta listen to other people sometimes. You know, there's all this wacky and wild opinions, preferences, you know, that's every episode basically is people saying, what are you talking about? I'm right. What are you talking about? So, you know, just gotta keep listening.
I feel like being on the podcast has given me a better understanding of like what my reading tastes are. Because I used to just like read things that people would tell me I should read things that I heard were good or like things that were classics or whatever. Um, and by like the spreadsheet forcing me to read things that are a little bit more outside my wheelhouse, like genres that I wouldn't typically go towards, I feel like it's giving me a better idea of like, oh, I actually do really like sci-fi westerns, and I do like a romance here and there. It's giving me a better idea of like the things that I do actually enjoy that I never would have approached before. So challenges me to read things that are new to me. Like I've never been like a sorry Fiona, I've never been like a vampire fiction kind of person. But when we did our vampires episode, I read Carmilla and I loved it. I was like so surprised at how much I loved it. So definitely gets me to read like outside of my wheelhouse.
I think that when we started recording, I would get very worried that my book friends would disagree with the kinds of books that I would like. And so I think that what I have learned on this podcast is to own the books that I enjoy and be proud of it. And I have definitely, I think my tastes have changed a little bit, but I think that at their core that they've stayed, like the books that I go back to again and again have stayed the same, and they might not be what everybody else likes, but you know what? They're what I like. And as Virginia says, there is a reader for every book. And I think that that is one thing I've learned is just, yeah, to own it and be proud with the kinds of books that I like. And there's someone else out there that will probably like it. And even if not, that's okay. I loved it. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, on that note, I feel like I've been convinced that there's like less a good book and a bad book and more like a book for people. And so in that, I would like to take back my words of not liking genre fiction because I have definitely found a book in probably each genre that I have enjoyed since the beginning of this podcast.
Is that our very first disagreement on this podcast? So
I think the podcast has kind of showed me that sometimes it's just in how a book is presented to you or sold to you, like just like any other kind of media. There's a synopsis that's been written with a particular reader or angle in mind, or somebody will write a review, and again, they have their own sort of angle or perspective that they present that information. So it's been such a joy to have all these book reviews and synopses by fellow book lovers here that kind of made me consider books that maybe I would not have considered seeing them on the shelf or at the library or at the bookstore. And kind of going, okay, maybe I should give this a chance.
Think we learned that everyone is an onion. Just when you peel back one layer, there's so much more. There's been so many kind of like shocking revelations from everyone about things that they enjoyed or things that I learned about them that I didn't know. So we started this podcast during the pandemic. So essentially during lockdown. And as Virginia said at the beginning, as a way to kind of connect the library with the patrons, but also as a way to like connect us to stories and kind of connect us to each other in a really, really difficult time, where finding connection and finding empathy and finding compassion and finding kind of hope in like a really difficult time. And I think that is the overwhelming power of story, the overwhelming power of a book is that connection, both you as a reader to an individual story, but also the way that that story can connect you to other readers or other parts of like the community or other readers who loved it or hate it, because you have that point of connection where you're talking about or discussing things. And even though, as mentioned, I do have very strong opinions, I really do love and enjoy talking and debating and discussing this kind of like beautifully human thing of a story. That really is what makes us different from other animals walking over this very strange little planet that we're on, is that love of story and that love of connection. And the fact that this was kind of born out of a time when we didn't have that, and it was a way to kind of keep us connected to each other and keep us connected to kind of like the library patrons that we love, and that's why we're in this profession to do, um, was really special. And that we've been doing this for 4 years, and that we've got to meet so many kind of wonderful people coming in, and we've had to say goodbye to people as they moved on to more wonderful things. It's been a chance to kind of get to know all of you and connect to you as people and as readers and part of that kind of like bigger human story. So yeah, thank you for the connection.
See, this is perfect because my thing that I learned is that everybody talks so much better than me. Everybody has just such great lines, and I'm sitting here thinking like I can't say anything anymore. And that's perfect because that is really what I did learn, that there's just so many books, so many opinions, so many great thinking out there that, like there's just yeah. So that's all I have to say. So yeah. Um Well, we did it. How many hours now?
I was thinking maybe it's
It is
close to
almost
200
1 o'clock. Yes.
minutes.
Yeah,
Ooh,
if you could edit it down to 200 minutes, Virginia.
semi. Is that the challenge? We need an exactly 200-minute show. Okay. All right. We'll see
Well,
what.
we had a break in between. That's like 20, 15, 20 minutes. That's like makes it a lot easier. There's like some little bits you can trim and smooth over.
Sure. Sure. All right. Well, I can say thank you enough to Fiona, to Mark, to Liz. I promise I'm not going to cry today, but I'm going to soon. So, I think we should wrap this up. It's so nice to see all of you again. Thank you so much. Like I said, really, this is let's say the only good time here at the library. Nobody's going to listen to this. Yeah. So yes, it is not just the best hour, the only hour that I care to come to work to. So thank you to all of you because of all of you. So thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for listening to us. And yeah, we hope like we will have another, I don't know, another 200, another whatever. And hope we'll see Fiona and Mark and Liz again very, very soon. So thank you again and happy reading, everyone.